And we're going live. All right.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Live exclusively for WCPT in Chicago, standing up and speaking out, here's Hal Sparks.
It is so good to be with you on this lovely holiday weekend. I can't tell you what a. I don't know if I enter into this next year with total trepidation and excitement or excitement and trepidation. I don't know if my concern over the future of this republic and the potential for a continued Donald Trump presidency is overwhelming my sense of hope yet. We will see. There is news on all fronts that point to um, a tight contest, but only if we choose to lose it. We start today. I want to start with a little bit of, since it's a holiday weekend, and some of you may, our regular listeners may not even be tuned in. We may have a kind of a softer turnout this weekend because it's a holiday weekend, and if you want to remove yourself from the political fray, there is no better time than now, I think, than this particular weekend. So this might be the sort of holiday special version of it. We might take it a little bit easy and try not to get too argumentative, but to just push the boundaries a little bit of what our conversation needs to be over the next 10 months, because that's really it. I mean, starting next week, kids, we have 10 months or 4 years and 5 years left of the Trump presidency. That's the distinguishing thing. The next 10 months are crucial on so many fronts. Now, let me be abundantly clear where my loyalties lie in terms of the upcoming November election and the primary season as it goes forward. This is before there's any question about who candidacy-wise I support or don't support or any of that stuff. Here's what I support. What I support is everyone who is eligible to vote voting, whether I agree with them or not. Every single one of them. That has primacy in this democracy, in America, over every other element of my own political philosophy. Mainly because I believe in my political philosophy so much, and I believe in the concepts and principles of our democracy so much, that without the full expression of every voter, my ideas won't get the pushback and refinement that they need. That leaving this up to anybody, to just kind of, well, you take the lead, I'm going to sit this one out, doesn't help anyone, even when it's someone that I am politically against, because their response to my argument teaches me how my argument is heard and allows me to craft my argument in such a way that it either communicates fully what the part that they may be missing, or it may flat out simply make me recognize that I was wrong in my position. It does happen. It's very rare, but it does happen. And then the other possibility is that I hear parts of what they're saying and mixed with parts of what I'm saying, an actual crucial solution that solves the problem occurs. That's the essence of democracy. So beyond my own political philosophy over things, the primary focus for me over the next 10 months is everybody voting who can vote. If you are legally eligible to vote, and only if you are legally eligible to vote, like, in case that needs to be clarified for our right-wing friends, citizens of the United States who are planning to be a citizen of the United States in 10 months from now, I suppose people could eject and move before then, or they or return to their home country, or have dual citizenship and decide to renege. There's all sorts of options. My point is, if you are eligible to vote, and only if you are eligible to vote, I want you participating, even if I agree with you. No, disagree with you. Yeah, especially if I agree with you. Even if I disagree with you. That was a Freudian slip. Even if I disagree with you, I'm more worried about the people I agree with in terms of voting than the people I disagree with voting. That's where I'm getting to. That's where that little slip came from, actually, because my concern going into the next 10 months is not about whether Trump voters are going to show up in the same numbers that they did in 2016, or that Republicans will feel driven, or feel they have, disenfranchised, or they feel left behind by this president. That is not my concern. I do want them to vote and participate, but I do not worry about their vote. That's not keeping me up at night. What's keeping me up at night, or it concerns me most of all, is the left voting. Is the participation in the primary process of, and the actual delivered vote in November, more than anything else. Now, if you guys are getting a little bit of a YouTube lag, I'll see if I can fix it by the settings going out. It's fairly low bandwidth where I am, but it's going out pretty consistently. So fingers crossed it'll stay that way. My concern is people showing up, people registering to vote, people participating in it. Vote.org is the site to check your registration. You can find your polling place. You can, if you are paranoid about purges and the like, which some of you have every reason to be, please check it regularly. Thank you, Carl, for posting that link in the chat room. This will be the primary focus of the next 10 months, as far as I'm concerned, because without this, everything else is just lip service. I simply do not care if about the petty aspects of interpersonal dynamics in the Democratic Party, and whether or not you feel someone is up to your standard. Then vote. Just vote for something else, I suppose. I don't believe in protest votes. I think they're ridiculous. Until you have a huge margin, protecting your, at least the general notions of your political philosophy, the idea of bifurcating out and, siphoning votes from your side is madness. But that being said, vote. As long as you vote, you're a participant. You can argue your point. I'm okay with that. But I want everybody to make sure that they're eligible to vote, that they are signed up. Start your year that way. Make that your New Year's resolution to every 3 months. Make sure your registration is solid at vote.org. Remind someone else. Plan ahead that if you're in a crucial primary state and somebody needs a lift to them, that you're going to take them. Now, I'm going to take a break, but then when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the Iowa caucuses and the history of them, and what they mean to our process, or what they should mean, if anything at all. And we'll discuss with some of our chatters. Maybe we'll have some calls. 773-763-9278 is our number. And the important part is, we'll talk about the history of it a little bit. But the important thing, like I said, is participation. Participate in the argument of it. I don't care about your ad hominem attacks of individuals, and I certainly have my problems with some candidates here and there. But I would rather have you argue the merits of the system that you're talking about, and practice those points that you care about. If you care about Medicare for all, or you believe in a public option system instead, or a pathway to universal care through a public option, those kind of things. There are multiple strategies on how to get there. Educate yourself on those. And if that is your position, argue them. And a lot of people find, and I think this is what maybe Warren found this year, was that the more people educated themselves about it, the more understanding they become of counter arguments and their ability to refine their argument and to the betterment of everyone. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. We are we're about to launch a new year. 2020 is upon us. We're going into the 20s, the roaring 20s, folks. They're here. We'll be back. What's happening? Can't Stop Lying. Good to have you back. Yes? Can you hear me okay?
Johnny's messaged me. He said he's been trying to connect with you, but he can't get in touch with you.
Oh, no. Well, I will connect him then. Let's see.
Right.
In clean feed, he can use his, I made his invite to clean feed a permanent one. So he does.
I'll let him know.
So yeah, but I just sent him another one anyways. So yeah, cool. I didn't think he was going to be here. So there you go. All right. Thanks for reminding everybody, Susan Graham. I'm till January 1st. Oh, Johnny's joining us. Johnny's almost here. I can see him hooking up. There he is. I hear him. Johnny, is that you?
Hey, you didn't tell me it was permanent. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that link always works. Okay, so now I know that let's see. I'm doubling up audio.
I sent some adorable text messages to you.
Oh, my phone isn't nearby because if I leave it nearby, it makes lots of noise. So I just have my iPad. I'm sorry.
Like your co-host's trying to get a hold of you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I thought you knew that your thing was permanent. It always works, I promise. So hello. All right. I don't know why there's a slapback on this. Curious that.
For that Elvis thing?
Yeah. Oh, it's just strange, the audio from
Back in 60, guys.
Okay, so it's on my side. I will figure it out. Damn it. Okay. Oh, I know what it is. Dun dun dun. Never mind. Let's see. Say something, Johnny. You say something. Okay, that turned it off. Okay, so that was that. So eCam is on there. Turn this off and this off. And okay, I think it'll work now. Say hello.
Check two.
Yeah, so much better. Haha, I solved it. It was just on my side. All good. All right, yeah. Sparks thinks that Sasha's really enjoyed it. Daddy, who's the crazy white man? Well, Hal Sparks is the answer to that sentence every single time, without fail. That's the question. That's the answer to that question. All right.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So Johnny Million is with us. Welcome.
Hey.
I wasn't even sure you were going to be joining us, and then I got a lovely message in the middle.
I said I was last week, you silly goose.
Yeah, I know. I lost track of years. I'm in Cleveland right now. Just raced over from a morning breakfast with the family. My kid and my mom and my cousins and everybody are all gathered over there. We had breakfast. It was an Aunt Martha breakfast, so I may be lagging midway through the show. I may drop into a carb coma. You know what I mean? Like
Aunt Martha.
Yeah.
What does Aunt Martha make?
Aunt Martha makes. She made waffles and eggs, and she made something that used to resemble bacon, I think. And coffee cake, and there was literally a basket of donuts passed around as bread. You know what I mean? As the bread for the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to soak up the bacon.
Yeah. You know, of all people,
Right.
So yeah, and they were. It wasn't like glazed donuts. There were chocolate dip donuts and powdered donuts. Like it was straight Entenmann's box. You know what I mean? Like straight.
Nice.
Yeah. So I may fall over in the middle of yeah. So but So I'm up here in Cleveland and I'm in a pivotal election state, Ohio. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad you're here because I have a question for you, Johnny Million.
Talk to me.
And I think you will represent our everyman in terms of this piece of information. What year did the Iowa caucuses, especially as we know them, begin? When did the Iowa caucuses start?
Holy moly! You know what? I think it's more recent than I thought it was. I think it was in the 80s.
It was 1972. But
okay.
yeah, but it was the result of the like daily stuffing the ballot boxes for Hubert Humphrey in Chicago at the Chicago convention.
Yeah, I was about to say that sounds like 4 years after the 1968 convention.
Yes, it was. And in 72, do you know the reason why Iowa has its caucus so early? And I'm curious if anybody in the chat room knows this, although they're on a slight delay from me, so they may, it may take them a little longer to answer. So I'll give them a chance at it. But
did they like barter for it?
No.
So like that they could be no?
No. It was way less complicated. It was a big old 1972 reason, which is no computers, and they had one mimeograph machine to tabulate all of the caucus votes.
Because they could count them?
Yeah. They had to count them, and then they had to reprint them, and they only had one mimeograph machine. So if you guys don't know what a mimeograph is, pre-Xerox, sometimes your teacher in school would
the ditto?
Yeah, it was a rolling thing. You could make copies of stuff by making a print.
And the ink was like purple and it smelled really cool.
Yes, and you could always tell when your teacher came back from the mimeograph machine because she had purple fingertips and she was a little loopy.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and anyway, so they only had maybe one or two of them. And so it took them a long time to tabulate the caucus votes to get them ready for the convention. And so Iowa being one of these, seeing itself as a flyover state with not a lot of resources. Remember, this is pre-biofuel. This is pre-corn in everything, right?
Yeah.
Literally, think of the politics of Iowa as a farm state pre-corn. I mean, we always made corn, but the real arc up of it in the late 70s and early 80s towards biofuels and high fructose corn syrup,
Right.
It was a much more diverse crop region. It was a much more normal farming experience, and people spread out all over the place, and it took them time to get their votes in. And they were, and Darn Tootin says, do you mean the Iowa cow cuss? They just yell at cows. Right. So this is kind of crucial to the entire process, is that there's a lot of talk about how, Iowa sets the tone and they, it's an artificial view of the rest of the country. And there's sort of a privilege to Iowa being able to do this and control this. Well, it was set up initially because of their lack of privilege, their lack of resources. And it was supposed to balance that part of it out. It was supposed to pick up the slack for the fact that this little podunk state with not a lot of resources could have their votes tallied and available for the actual big count at the convention. Now,
crazy.
Yeah, and the convention itself, that was supposed to be the time initially. That was when everybody came in, and the votes were counted there, And they'd have an original count in all the caucus states and the primary states. Then they would bring it in, and then they would, to the actual convention, and that would be the official count. And then the official count would be read in. Now that was supposed to be the real experience of voting, was at the actual convention. And the caucuses and the primaries were like were like gathering them at the polling places on a smaller scale. You know what I mean? You didn't really take them as the official until they were done there. And so they were, some of them, the caucus states especially, were almost for show because you can't quite trust them to the same level you could trust a primary, was the theory, because a primary has written votes, it's individual, people do it one-to-one.
Caucus is the weird, like, that's like the town hall.
Yeah,
kind of
and they
thing, right?
stand in
Like
a
people are
room.
just shouting.
Right, and it becomes this odd, it's almost an it's an exercise in social dynamics to watch a caucus versus a
Just
primary.
like somebody yelling, the ayes have it all of a sudden.
Yeah, and then people also having, whoever can exert the most emotional pressure on the other, the other people there will often have a leg up on others. So it's a really fascinating aspect of just humanity, and it's one of the reasons, by the way, why the Republicans aren't having primaries in most states. They're just killing them outright. Because I think, less because of the primary runs, because you might have somebody that, if Bill Weld gets, 18 votes in some of these areas, I'd be shocked. It's the caucuses that they're more worried about, because that's where people can come in and start yelling. And not all those people are going to be Democrats.
They're not going to yell the right things.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, and Trump is not about giving anyone a voice but him. Yeah. So that's a big part of why they're worried about it and why they shut theirs off, and why in some ways a lot of people are less excited about the Iowa caucuses, as in these days. It's really interesting to me, because I've been, if you look at kind of social pressure, we've gotten into a very, marching and protesting has always been a crucial part of the American democratic system. And not since the 60s have we seen a run of marches and protests like we've seen under this president. And in the and in the caucus,
that was how he kicked off. That was the beginning of his.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything.
Yeah,
he activated everybody.
Right, and it's curious how and counter protests too. I mean, obviously not. I mean, it hasn't. I mean, Charlotte qualifies as one of these. Groups are, across the board. There's this. That's the motivating factors. It is almost an Instagram and social media affect on our political system, that everybody is. There's personal ego and face involved in your presentation of your political beliefs in a way that really hasn't been here since the 60s. And I guess I guess the Klan is kind of side of it, because they have to wear a mask, so it's a weird. They find themselves in a weird situation, I suppose, in this situation, which is why a lot of these guys, the marchers in Charlotte, are wearing these khakis and golf shirts and carrying tiki torches, because of the ego involved in presenting your belief, not just voting your beliefs, but showing your beliefs as well, right? And there's certainly value in that. And I think it's something that probably stems out of the AIDS crisis primarily. It certainly showed up in the post effects of 9/11. But this idea of silence being acceptance, and you must be seen showing that your support, has driven, a big swath of this. And I look at the caucus system, and I think it is leading. There's almost like a backlash to to people showing, like even on social media, it's starting to, people are starting to like, it's like it's worked their last nerve a little bit too much, or it's too presentational. People start checking out at a certain point. And I wonder if the caucuses will have as much of an effect simply because they will seem like posturing.
Right.
That the people who vote and just believe what they believe, but aren't socially adept or forward about it, or very vocal in what they believe, may feel kind of intimidated by that process. And it will be an experiment going into this season, because they're coming up. We're about what, 5 weeks away.
Yeah.
From most of these starting up, and that will be a curious aspect of this, to kind of the vocal nature of it. Having done Politicon and some of these other things, like watching people, behave in politics, and I'm curious how that affects everybody on social media. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more Johnny Million. 2020 is going to be a year you tell your children about. Hopefully for good. But
Hopefully.
there are by no means any guarantees. We'll talk about why I think that when we come back. So there's a ton of stuff going on. I don't know if you know this, but Russia just said it's going to start selling arms to Iran again.
Oh, nice.
Right about the time North Korea is testing missiles. And I'm one of these people who strategically believes that this is still a strategy by those three countries. There is coordination going on.
Yeah. They're the three with nothing to lose.
Right. Yeah. And they're chemical countries, essentially. They have nothing else.
Yep.
And if you leave that, if you're, hold on one second, I gotta fix something real quick. Oh, that's fine. Go back. Thanks for the Twitch heads up. I appreciate that. I forget it doesn't change the game on there. It should blank it out, but it doesn't. That's a restream problem. So I will.
What you playing on Twitch lately?
It apparently.
Are you streaming this on Twitch?
Yes, I'm streaming this on Twitch, but it still says Call of Duty. So. And
kinda.
But that's normally what I play. So talk shows and podcasts. There we go. Ta-da! Thanks for the heads up, guys. If you're in Twitch right now, give me a cheer. See if you can cheer on there. There's also a cool merch thing below. It's sweet. There's all kinds of cool stuff there. Yeah, appreciate that, totally, Jersey. I think those three countries are, and if they get China into the club,
China,
it's a real problem.
Yeah,
it's a worldwide problem. Over 80 dead in a bombing in Somalia's capital. I don't know why. Oh yeah,
we're back in 60.
Yeah.
And you got 3 callers.
Okay, cool. Jesus. And they think it's Al-Shabaab.
This is Ron Calgo.
And this is Robbie Earhart.
And you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So we got a couple of callers on the line. We'll take them right now before I get into another diatribe about stuff. But I do want to address at some point that almost all of Trump's gambits especially North Korea, for example, are currently failing miserably. And nearly none of them, are working. Obviously, the tax cut did not. There was no $4,000 in everyone's bank account, like he said.
Nope.
None of that stuff is true. And there will be a lot to hammer, but there is a strategy for Trump to win this fall that concerns me. Do I think he's capable of pulling it off? Not 100%, but it is there. But let's take some callers and see what they want to talk about, and then I'll get to that in a little bit. How's that for a tease? It
That sounds good.
is good. Who do we have first, Devin?
First, we have Tim out in Milwaukee.
Cool. Hey, Tim. Tim, are you there? Can we hear you? Tim?
Tim.
There he is.
Hopefully, hang on.
Oh,
Can you hear me now?
Yep. There you go.
yes.
Is that better?
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Happy holiday.
Thank you. You too.
I'm wondering if you can give advice on which states to focus on to make sure Mitch McConnell does not return as majority Senate leader. Which Senate seats are ripe? How to focus on those? Because they're playing a game 2 steps ahead of us in terms of stealing elections and making sure people can't vote.
Right.
But if we get enough people out in the proper states, I do think we can just get Mitch out of the majority seat. I don't know if he's going to be unseated, but the one best way to be done with him and get some legislative things done is to make sure he's not the majority leader,
Right?
Because he's ruining our democracy.
No question. So obviously the primary one is Kentucky. Amy McGrath in Kentucky is crucial. It does not mean that whoever would, if they retain majority, that the person who would fill in the seat would be any more trustworthy than Mitch McConnell. The Republicans are only going to put someone in who's as sycophantic to their current cause as McConnell or worse, simply because McConnell is of this idea that he has a legacy that will outlast Trump. He believes this. The rest of the Republicans don't care. They believe their legacy is Trump. And so some of the people filling in those, who they might bring up, that's the dangerous part. Obviously, Cory Gardner is one of them. He's in Colorado. Clinton won Colorado by 5 points. That's crucial. That's the one, one of the ones they're nervous about as well. Martha McSally in Arizona. She's that's seen as a Trump state, but they've been going purple. And the crucial thing, interestingly enough, and it's where she might it's a balancing act, simply because she's a female candidate, and the biggest turn in voters against Donald Trump that will have a crucial play in this election is women.
Women.
By volume, and they're not, by the way, Democratic women or black women in the Democratic Party, which are seen as the sort of two crucial groups at play in the election cycle. They're not. They're middle of the road centrist Republicans who are socially democratic on certain issues because of how they feel about their children, literally in terms of Republican women. And if there's a social issue that pertains to their child, they will lean that direction. If there's a social issue that they don't seem as part of it, they will blow it off and not care. That's kind of the essence of the female Republican voter currently. But they do hedge towards the middle, and they do vote Democratic sometimes. This time around, they're polling right now at in a lot of these states at plus 25 towards the Dems. They are leaning away from, and not just from men, not an arc from men. They're not 25 points away from men. In some cases, they're 37 points from men. It's that men are underwater as GOP voters, and women are way above water and leaning Democratic going into this election cycle. Now, a good portion of them support, quite frankly, people that the hard left of the Democratic Party won't, view as villainous. specifically Buttigieg, interestingly enough, and Biden, and followed by Warren. They are not the Sanders voters. And were that person to become the nominee, that support point drops a lot. So that's where the Democratic choice does matter. That being said, she's one of these things where she's a female senator, but in a Trump-heavy state, and it's questionable whether or not that shift in female voters will be against her. The same thing kind of applies to Susan Collins, although a lot of people, her thing.
Get her out of office.
Yeah, her thing is a trust issue. The problem is who fills in for her. Maine is not necessarily one of these states that is hardcore Republican, and that's why they've had someone like Collins for a long time. If you replace her with, if they primaried her and came up with a Republican that was harder, they would lose the seat. The person who will run against Collins and win will be nearly indistinguishable from her personality-wise, almost. There will not be a firebrand liberal winning her seat. There's a reason why she's in it. But if they can go, I'm her, but you can trust me, that's the sales point for Maine. If Dems run a left of center Democrat who is a deep thinker, somebody who actually cares about the issues, isn't blowing people off, and isn't just a corporate stooge, the idea running in that runs in everybody's mind. If they're they do reasonable voting, they consider them deeply and go, I'm a Democrat, but she's a Republican. She moves all over the place. She said she was against certain things, and you always dumped her. So she's hers. Gary Peters in Michigan. That one's solid. That one could go Democratic.
We only need 2 seats, correct?
Yeah, he's that's a Democratic seat. He's probably solid. He's a Democrat, but they've been trying to flip that one red, but it's still a crucial state.
We only need 2 seats.
Right, but you got to hold on to them though too. And the Michigan state thing, I actually think Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania are going to go Democratic this time around by just a mass vote, because the shift.
What's his name? Knucklehead here in Wisconsin's on the block.
Yes,
I believe.
Right.
Republican.
Yeah. But even then, yeah, and then John Cornyn in Texas is crucial, and David Perdue in Georgia. Although they don't think Georgia's going to go. Georgia's the hardest one. Georgia is the one where the voting protections matter, because you need only look at the Stacey Abrams race to know that they are not above fixing Georgia. Georgia is the Chicago of the 1960s. That is the ballot stuffing example of the world right now, and it matters. And there's an increasing voter block in Georgia, largely because of how Georgia makes its money these days. Georgia has become a production city for Netflix. Marvel shot some of Endgame there. They do Walking Dead is shot there, and a lot of people move there to work from the arts and from the industry outside of that, which has moved the voting block because it's such a crucial part. And those folks saying we're not going to shoot here, we're going to move out. Pardon?
Who are Georgia's senators right now?
Well, David Perdue is the only one who's up next time.
Okay.
Yeah. So but there's a belief that it will go blue presidential next year. That this coming year, Georgia there's a very strong chance, as Kornacki and 538 as I can possibly get. I'm standing here, I'm making hand gestures, I'm putting my hands in my khaki pockets, and I'm adjusting my glasses. But I'm saying that if Georgia goes blue for real, if you're talking about where to put the pressure on, where to focus energy, the 2 points I would say that need the most attention are Kentucky to support Amy McGrath, because that is pivotal. It gets McConnell out of the seat, but it also gives us a seat. And it's a shocker to the entire electorate. If you can marshalling that, and then Georgia, and Georgia, because of the vote theft that's going on down there, if that could be wrested back, then you're okay. And if Purdue could go out, that's a winning seat. The rest of them, by the way, I think Michigan, I think Pennsylvania and Wisconsin are possibilities simply because of that shift. But Wisconsin will have that balancing act where they'll go Democratic for president and keep their Republican senators as this kind of odd, like, we're evening things out.
I should know this. I don't even know who's running against Ron. I'm pretty sure Ron Johnson's on the block this year.
Yeah.
Every 6 years. So,
I can't think of them right.
No Democrat that's really jumped out.
Yeah, no, and it's largely because of that. Georgia and Kentucky should be the main focus of the Democratic Party, as far as I'm concerned, because the rest of them will be a natural. They're all focused on a lot of the states, but their extra effort should be put on those two states, in my estimation, Georgia and Kentucky. But anyways, thanks for calling. Appreciate it.
One other request for all listeners. If you refer to Fox News, call it Fix News.
Yes, Fix, because the fix is in.
A lot of people's beliefs.
That's right.
In it.
I
great holiday.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Absolutely. Yeah. We're going to take a break. Don't forget to support the show, patreon.com/HalSparks. It makes a great New Year's resolution. I'm just saying, you could help us out. And I've been working behind the scenes with one of our Uber patrons to create a gift for you guys, for the patrons that have been with us for a while. That's unique, one of a kind, and super special. That's all I'm saying right now. It's cool. You'll get one too, Johnny, because you've been, you've been a constant in an ever-changing universe, right? But patreon.com/HalSparks is a great way to support the show. Don't forget to follow Johnny Million at JMillion on Twitter. I'm at Hal Sparks on Twitter. We'll be back right after this. Yeah. Okay, so sounds all right. That's okay for us. Hi, chat room. Sorry, I feel like I've been ignoring you, but here we go. Let's see. Trump's real percentage of supporters are 14% as the Trump cult. The rest 11% of supporters are Republicans. It only adds about up to 25% of Trump supporters, and not what MSNBC is like 35 to 41. I agree with that, although the hard line 11% to 20% of that on top of there gives him that he shouldn't be removed from office 34%, Darlene, and it rarely drops below that point. So even though those 12 or 14% of them might be just I wear an R on my shirt Republicans, then they're still going to lock in. It's you consider them sort of a lost cause in it, but you can move those 11%. There's a bunch of soft Republican voters who voted for Trump on a whim last time because of how much they hated Clinton. No matter how much they dirty up Biden in this next run around, or anybody, but that's the main one they're focusing on. They're still not going to have animosity towards him the way they had it towards Hillary Clinton, and the abject sexism of a woman running for president, which she was ice skating uphill against. Yeah. Hal forgot Steve Kornacki gestating with a rolled up paper in his hand. That's true. I should have a. He's always tamping his hands down. This is what we know. We're not sure about this. If you look here, he's just the political weatherman.
I like him.
He's great. He's the political weatherman for the show. I see him as the long form Chris Matthews at some point, way down the line when he's old and crotchety.
Yeah, he does a good job when he sits in.
Hal, what do you think of Nancy just keeping the impeachment paperwork forever? No, I think she's going to release it, but she's going to be strategic about it. It won't be. She won't just hold on to it. She'll send it up, because the idea is that if she doesn't ever send it up, it's more fuel for them to say that it doesn't have merit.
There was never really anything.
Yeah. I'm drinking out of my cousin's Marine Corps mug. He made me coffee before he ran back to the house. He had to drop me off back at his house.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
There's a big push since that constitutional or the Christianity Today, article that came out that said Trump should be removed from office. That was it was a it was a moment. It was it was sort of one of those Rocky moments where you're like, you cut him, you see, he's not a machine, he's a man. There's an element of people seeing that and going, whoa, not every Christian backs this dude. Not every, they don't automatically believe what he's selling. And that's a huge thing. That is that is no small, they're downplaying it like crazy. And Trump is playing up his Christian bona fides as best he can, both Corinthians full. He's loaded up both barrels with his Corinthians, and he's firing away at Jesus memes and stuff like that, hoping that picks up the slack, and then saying, we promised you Merry Christmas, and and we'll make it so that poor people can't get abortions anymore. Because let's be completely honest, the anti-abortion crowd knows full well that wealthy people will be able to take care of any unwanted pregnancy they want.
100%.
Yeah, it's poor people and women of few resources and women who find themselves the victims of rape and incest, who should carry out their duty to God. They will be forced by the state to carry a baby to term and become a broodmare for the state. Which, by the way, tell me what big government is again? Yeah. So, right. And by the way, and part of the argument that they're using is this idea that Democrats, especially, but especially women in the Democratic Party, are fighting for the right of not only abortion on demand for because you don't like the sex of the child, or the child might have Down syndrome or something like that. That has a lot of moral failings in it, clearly, but this false belief that children are being executed post-birth as an abortion aspect, which is based on this idea that that I think it was I forget which governor it was, the dude who went on the radio and was basically explaining what the procedure was for a baby that was born that was not going to survive, could not survive outside the womb. They knew it would not. And whether or not whether if a therapeutic abortion was necessary to save the mother's life because a non-viable fetus, a baby, was going to kill her too. It would not survive outside the womb, and the mother would die. That's when they have a late-term therapeutic abortion. That's what that is. It's extraordinarily rare, horrifying for the mother. Not a choice situation where someone's making what we consider a choice, like it's something at a because when we think of choice outside this argument, we think of salad bar or what kind of TV to buy. You know what I mean? Choice is a word that carries that kind of weight. It's almost flippant. But inside this, this argument, when choice is brought up, especially in terms of late-term therapeutic abortions, where the mother's life is in danger and the child is not viable, it is born without crucial organs, with malformities that will cause it not to survive hours past birth. The question becomes whether or not to have the therapeutic abortion beforehand, or go through with the birth, and then you discuss whether or not you try to resuscitate the child repeatedly, or let it die of natural causes, if there is no hope for that. And a woman who finds herself in that point of having to experience something like that is not making a choice.
Right.
There is no choice in this where the child survives.
No, they're mid-tragedy.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are in a tragedy making that's a choice like Sophie had a choice. You know that like there is no, and in those terms, there are no Democrats. I don't believe that are of any measure. Everyone has their crackpots, but the vast majority of people look at the choice around whether or not to have a child with an incredible amount of seriousness and trusting that serious decision to the woman and her doctor in those situations. And but the idea is painted that that Trump is literally saying that they just want to have a post-birth abortion, which is a murder, by the way. That is a living, breathing person who is they are literally an autonomous being at that point. They exist whether or not the parents want them to or not. They will be like if someone can survive in an incubator.
Post-birth abortion.
Well, that's what they're talking about, and it's madness. But that's what he's got left to sell to the Christian right. I got you judges who will fight abortion in the abstract. This is what Democrats want to do. And P.S., you know how you're not a big fan of immigrants from the South coming up here? Mm-hmm. I'll also take care of that. Those are the big ones that are building up his support for amongst the evangelical base. Well, this Christianity Today article showed that evangelical and Christian base. Well, first of all, that evangelicals are not the primary group of Christians in the country. They're not even the vast majority. They are the loudest. And again, that brings us to the caucus aspect of things. That in the caucus of Christianity, the evangelicals are the ones who shout everybody down. And evangelism, literally the act of evangelizing, is the sales pitch of Christianity. Baptists believe you must be baptized to become a Christian. That's essential to it. Lutherans have an individualistic, and Presbyterians also follow in this idea of what Christianity is something you practice at home as well as in the church. You pray in secret and in public. There's a mix of those things. Philosophically, there's a lot of those elements that differentiate them. But evangelicals are the used car salesmen of Christianity at this point, especially the megachurch crowd. And oftentimes they're selling a lemon they don't even drive. While other people who believe deeply in these things are left out of the conversation entirely. We got to take a break. When we come back, we got more calls. So 773-763-9278. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. WCPT820.com is the website. Check it out. Pamela says in the chat room.
I'll be right back, Hal.
Okay, cool. Don't forget rolling back civil rights like Brown v. Board of Education. I don't know that that's a primarily evangelical kind of thing. I don't know that that's crucial to them. As a matter of fact, if you ask them outright, they would say no. The racist aspect of those people pertains almost solely to their vision of what they believe like South Americans coming over the border plan to do when they get here. It's mostly a workers thing. Internally in their church, they'll share a pew with anybody. So it just spikes around those issues. And they consider it a mass issue. And that's how racism goes. It is seldom, the more one-to-one it is, the less racist it is. It's about how you feel about a class of people, a group of people, and as a whole. Let's see. Amos Sparrow. Some strategists actually thought about calling Bernie anti-Semitic for not supporting Israel enough. Netanyahu is not a good leader. Yeah, Yeah, that's kind of absurd. We're very close to a thank you for reminding everybody Can't Stop Lying. The Wonky Donk is my podcast with Jackie Schechner. You can join us and enjoy. And if you're a patron, you get to see the video cast of it, the vodcast. Only you guys. Isn't that fun? If you say anything critical about Israel to the GOP, they immediately say you hate Israel. Right. That its existence. But, Amos, they oftentimes they have the same feeling about America. And you can almost see like a like a reflex in. So on the right, it's if you denigrate America, if you criticize America, you're denigrating America. And if you criticize Israel, you're denigrating Israel. And that criticizing the mechanics or the policies or past actions is not the same thing as criticizing the country itself. In many ways, it's an attempt to better it. Let's not repeat that part of our past. It depends on if you view it sort of as therapy or as a sentence of guilt. And if you view it from the point of therapy, it's healthy. If you view it as a form of sentencing, it won't affect any change whatsoever, and it will often entrench the other side's feeling about your argument. You'll dig in around it. So when the right sort of ignores the crimes of the past or ignores the crimes of Israel that they've done because different leaders did different stuff, and they think that's just a segment of it, so you can't say the whole is rotten because of this. So they were like, okay, well, if you're going to attack so hard on these points, I'm just going to defend it overtly because you're nitpicking and you're cherry picking negative things. Policies we've moved past, we no longer do, or that Israel no longer does, or that they're trying to shift out by changing leaders. But the existence of Israel, the existence of America shouldn't be called into question. And how they hear your criticism is you're calling the existence into question. Are you unwrapping Christmas presents, Johnny?
Kind of.
Oh, yeah? Candy? Is there a bag of something?
No, it's the convoy is recording this afternoon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And so, like months ago, I bought a couple of things that I've yet to use, like a headphone amplifier.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love the gear that sits there, and I'm like, when?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear it. I'm excited. Are these original tunes or?
Yep. Yeah.
Right on. Well, Nerd Halen just did Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and released it.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's on iTunes, and we also did. We do Pretty Woman live, but we started singing Nerdy Woman. Nerdy woman walking down the So I'm rewriting I'm rewriting the lyrics to be nerdy, and we're gonna track Nerdy Woman as a spoof song with all new lyrics.
Perfect.
Yeah. And we're gonna release it on Valentine's Day.
Aw.
Yeah. So that's something to look forward to. And I think we're shooting a music video too. So yeah.
I'd love to see a music video. Of Halo.
It'll be a good time.
Live in 60, gents.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, precisely, Lord Dracul. I mean, that's the statement that they use, though. Let's see. I'm rolling back. Hey, folks, which Republican president criminal are we talking about? I just got here. Oh, thanks for pointing that out. Stop lying. Yeah, I've really enjoyed Dylan Moran lately. Did you watch any of them, Johnny?
No, not yet. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, Can't Stop Lying just put a link to his website in there. It's really cool. Can't Stop Lying is killing it with the links today. Bless your heart. Thanks, man. Good to see you. Coffee in the new year, I insist. And he couldn't make it last time, so I think he's making up for lost time. So yeah, we just if you look below the show right now in the links below, there's links to Patreon. Oh, coming back. Oh, jumped right in. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Is that me? Was I off?
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're prowling out.
A space little pimp stick.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
So that I was talking about the the gender gap in the election cycle coming up, and I don't think it's ever been this stark. Now, it does not mean, by the way, that huge amounts of men are all of a sudden voting for Donald Trump again or deepening their commitment. As a matter of fact, the commitment of men towards Donald Trump has shallowed. It has gone from a 15 and 12 point margin to 10, 5, and even in a couple of battleground states, a 1% margin, which, by the way, all of this within the margin of error, 3%, either way. So the crucial, which is 1.5, I guess it's 3 as a whole, 1.5 points either direction is how you read that. But
220, 221.
yeah, right. Whatever, but on the as far as female voters, this big arc up, has hit that 35, plus number, which is extraordinary, especially in some of the battleground states, and a lot of it has to do with with these former Republican women voters who went out on a limb and voted for Donald Trump and haven't largely statistically been with him since. I think they gave him a 4-month lead. They let him go for about 4 months. And then that number has started to creep.
He didn't really come out of the gates doing much for them.
No. And it just got worse. So now it's solidifying. And that's why, by the way, you're going to see such a tooth and nail fight in the Democratic primaries for this, because almost anybody can win with those numbers if they maintain. If. We're going to take a call, though, and I'll tell you why I have an if in there in a second. Who do we have on the line, Devin?
First, we have Chris out in Palatine.
Excellent. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show.
Yes, a belated Merry Christmas and an early Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too.
And let's hope we... I have to correct you on a couple things, Hal.
Okay.
First of all, Ron Johnson in Wisconsin's not up for re-election this year, unfortunately, or next year rather. He's in 22.
Is he? Okay.
22.
Sorry, I was referring to my. I have a list of people who are vulnerable, and I don't know why I assumed he was in this next round. I think just because I've been focusing on the people who look like they could go. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Also, there are two seats open in Georgia.
Yeah.
Because the governor of Georgia appointed a replacement.
Right.
In that person, the woman has to run for re-election in 2020. So theoretically, you could pick up 2 seats in Georgia.
Right.
But I do need to bring up one point. You're kind of downgrading the evangelicals, and that is a very, 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 very risky assumption, because evangelicals represent roughly. You're correct. They represent a very small minority of so-called Christians.
Mm-hmm.
They represent about 15% of the American population, give or take a few votes,
mm-hmm.
give or take a few people. They represent 25% of votes. So 25% of the people who get off their butts and actually vote are the Christian evangelicals. It don't take too many more votes. if you get 100%, if you get 100% of that 25%, you don't need too many more votes to win
Right.
the election.
Well, and hence my whole point. Hence my whole point in the beginning of the show about everybody voting, about that volume, because you don't swamp those kind of numbers unless everybody participates. But if you do, 75% of Christians aren't going to vote the same way this crowd does, and it will, that will.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because they don't vote. Because this is the whole point, Hal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 70 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I have voted since 1972 because that was when, because back the 21, you had to be 21 in order to vote way back then.
Right.
So in every presidential and, as Norm Goldman called them, congressional elections, since 72, I have voted. And then I've usually voted in the primaries. I can't say for the off year, for the odd elections, like Illinois has their municipal elections coming up, in the odd year. I skipped a lot of those because, who cares who's the mayor, who's the city councilman for, the village of Palatine, big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But at any rate, the thing is that I've been reading all these things. Well, the millennials, and by the way, I'm a baby boomer who has total contempt for millennials.
Okay.
I know they don't think much of me either. But you know what? We vote. They don't.
Right.
And that's the thing. I hear that, well, we have to have they whine. We have to have somebody who inspires us. We have to have somebody who we like.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have somebody we agree with. They have to look good. They have to have positions that we agree with. I got news for all the people out there, those so-called progressives. And that, by the way, goes for the Bernie B's, too. And there are a lot of words that you can use that begins with B. Bro is one.
Right.
Backer is another. Bastard is a third. I'll let you.
Right. Understood.
What I think of them. But they go up there and they have a hissy fit, and they say, well, the person's not perfect, so therefore we're opposed to them. Well, anything that you believe in, if we have right now we have 57 weeks of Trump minimum.
Right.
If we have 5 years and 3 weeks and 3 more weeks of Trump, everything that you claim to believe in is gone forever.
Right.
Or not forever, but probably your lifetime. Because I will guarantee over the next 5 years that whoever the president is will nominate at least 2. And if Trump is reelected, he will appoint 4 Supreme Court justices.
I agree.
I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is not immortal.
Mm-hmm.
As much as we hope she is,
right.
I think her survival odds over the next 5 years are not that great.
Mm-hmm.
Likewise, I think Stevens is likely to retire or die. And certainly, if Trump is reelected, you would see Clarence Thomas and Alito resign and allow Trump and the Republicans to put in, a 40-something, hardcore right-wing conservative. Trump already has appointed over 25% of the
federal judge, federal
judges, and close to, I think, 40% of appellate judges.
Mm-hmm.
Basically the people who really make the decisions, and he'll easily appoint half the judiciary, easily half the judiciary. Plus, everything he's doing in destroying all of the federal agencies and every environmental rule. You say you like the environment, forget about it. You say you want, Roe versus Wade is, you can kiss that goodbye.
Yeah.
LGBT rights. You'll see so many religious,
exceptions
for that.
Right.
And it wouldn't even surprise me to see them turn around and apply that to minorities. Because after all, my hardcore religious beliefs say that blacks are inferior to whites, so therefore I should be able to discriminate against them.
Well, I think Jews is the first one of that. I mean, that's always that was one of the the most recent anti-discrimination laws that came in was Jews not being exempt from organizations because of their beliefs and the like. And going back to that as a religious exception is an easy rollback in the direction that they're going for if you're going to open that gate. And then race being a totally different category, but you're probably right. Yeah, but yeah, go ahead.
But I get so disgusted when I hear these people. There's one thing, these people say, well, this person doesn't have the right views, or that person doesn't have the right views. There's only one view right now for this election, period. who will beat Trump. And and my feeling is Joe Biden. We cannot go for a roller coaster. Sanders is not going to win. There is no way in hell he's going to win. And we should focus on 6 states. We should focus on Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and they may try to pick up another state in there and in the long line. But certainly, if we win Iowa, and we need to New Hampshire, by the way, also because we barely won New Hampshire, we barely won Minnesota. So we need to concentrate on making sure that we win those states, and as I said, plus pick up Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, and then we get 4 years to settle down, get to fumigate all of the federal agencies, to purge all of the Trumpites that he has seated in all those federal agencies, and try to get back into a somewhat semblance of normality. Otherwise, guess what? I'll be dead. I mean, I've got cancer. I'm 70 years old. The odds of me living 20 years are slim and non-existent. The odds of me living 10 years are probably not that great. So it's not going to really affect me, but it's going to sure as hell affect all you millennials.
I appreciate the call, and I agree with the 100% participation idea, and that this idea that inspiration is the thing that will make you vote. That should be the thing that makes you caucus for somebody. That should be something that makes you inspired to knock on doors during the primary season for them. But your principles and your desire to see, everything that's been hard work for in civil rights and labor rights and all those things that have been in existence that you've been taking for granted, quite frankly, for a long time, should be the thing that makes you knock on doors during the general for whomever gets the election. Because there is the inspiration should be the fact that all of that will be gone. I think that part of what you're saying is absolutely dead on. We got to take a break, but I appreciate you calling in and hanging in there and finishing that thought. I appreciate it. We'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. We'll be back right after this. You got it. Let's see. Hope and love are greater than fear. I agree. Cue the tape of how you predicted Hillary will win in a landslide color. Well, the issue with her was she won she won. Yeah, she won the popular vote, and she would have won the electoral college, but for 75,000 votes. And a lot of that was exactly what he was addressing, Robin, which is the idea that there were holdout votes. There were people who voted down ticket but didn't vote in the presidential. They left it blank because they withheld their vote for her, but they wouldn't vote for Trump. And that margin, those 75,000 votes, are exactly meaningful. And had those 75,000 votes shifted in those particular states, the electoral landslide would have matched her 3 million vote win in the popular. So his point about everybody voting and not waiting around for somebody to get inspired is, especially when it's this meaningful, is point taken. I would agree with you 100%, Amos. Amos says Jimmy Carter is a real Christian. Yep. And I think there's...
Back in 60.
Thank you. I think there's sort of a rise of the inspiration that he has caused. I think he's the impetus for why you're seeing why Christianity Today wrote the article that they did. And people denigrated Carter for the longest time, and painted him as sort of a cream puff. And that was falling into the sales pitch that Reagan shot at him. That was the winning Reagan strategy, was to make him look weak and ineffective. Never mind the fact that crime in the 90s went down because of Carter taking the lead out of gasoline. Literally 20-year difference made a difference. All the people whose lives were saved, all the rapes, murders, and armed robberies that didn't occur because of that choice, Not that they knew it at the time, but yeah. Bless you.
Thank you.
This is Doris Davenport, host of The Doris Davenport Show. All local, all the time. Now let's get back to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back. Oh, goodness. Johnny Millions, allergic to the new year.
Did that make it on the air?
Yeah. Yes, it did. Of course it did. It sounded like a shotgun blast. I was concerned that you were hunting ducks. Good Lord, man. You've got a huge cranium. Of course, it echoes. I think we have another caller on the line. I want to get to them. But by the way, it's two. Georgia has two senators, David Perdue and Johnny Isakson. I think are their main guys. Yeah, and both can go. I'm just saying. But go ahead. Yeah, who do we have, Devin? I think we have another caller. Yeah.
We have George on the southwest side.
Excellent, George on the southwest side. Go ahead.
Hey, happy holidays and happy New Year and a joyous Festivus for the rest of us.
Right. How was your feats of strength this year, by the way?
Overstate oh, okay. It's impossible to overstate the danger to our democracy and our future that exists right now in ways we can't even figure out yet. And that's why it is imperative that everybody has to pull together, everybody has to register and vote, and vote blue no matter who, which leads me to my question. What is up with Tulsi Gabbard? She was a big supporter of Bernie in 2016.
Right.
And with Bernie running this year, why did she decide to run for president? And her presidential run has been, to say the least, bizarre in a number of aspects. She doesn't show up for a debate that she qualified for, and then she votes present on the two articles of impeachment. I just like to hear you riff on what you perceive about Tulsi Gabbard and what she's up to.
Well, I think we're all learning that there were several extraordinary things that Hillary Clinton said in 2016 and now that bore out in truth. And I think that, the stuff she said about Tulsi, if Tulsi hadn't voted present on the impeachment articles, I think Hillary's criticism of her as a Russian asset, even though she didn't actually name her, specifically, but we knew who she was talking about, would have been an arrow in Gabbard's quill as as a non-establishment Democrat that she could have used. But because she did that present vote, everybody became very aware that she has, she appears to have handlers in that area. Now, I talked a little bit about the cult she grew up in Hawaii, and the fact that they got some magic money a few years ago, and part of the trend was to promote her in as a political figure, using some of that money, and it's always been sketchy. And there was ties to money laundering, and when you think money laundering these days, pretty much, unless you're talking about a drug cartel, you're talking about Russia. And so it wouldn't be surprising if that was some of the floating money around. Now, oddly enough, she's turned into kind of like the evil twin of Marianne Williamson in this whole thing. You know what I mean? Like, if Marianne Williamson was the angel of the Democratic Party, she's the devil on the other shoulder. There's this weird aspect to her that is just, she looks like a supervillain. She doesn't play it down. It's really weird. And let's be abundantly clear on two fronts. A, she has no chance. There is no way Tulsi Gabbard wins any primary, wins any caucus, wins any measurable votes. This is like Rick Santorum running to some degree. And Rick Santorum has said some gnarly stuff behind closed doors equal to Tulsi Gabbard. They're both a different version of the same evil. That being said, Gabbard herself is and one of our chat rooms says she's a troll. I think she's running as a spoiler. The idea is you don't run to win, you run to cut. I don't know how many people look back on the fact that, Kamala Harris, took a bit of a hit after she went after Biden. But it was when she started getting attacked on her flank by Tulsi Gabbard as well that it made it harder for her to raise money. The biggest attack on her in the debates, I think, came from Gabbard. Specific attack on her. She's just there to cut people. She's there, she's not going to win in this respect. That being said, I mean, there's a big run. The former governor of Hawaii is saying she should step down for voting present. And you prove that she has no intention of actually winning the nomination in that present vote. So in terms of her, I don't take her seriously. I think if anything, she's running to be, in best case scenario, Bernie's VP, viewed as a woman of color, head of the the Hindu caucus, I think, in the Congress, if I'm not mistaken. Viewed as an example of diversity in that regard, and has been standing with him long enough, ideologically on certain things that she qualifies. And her language around our interventionist military policy is extraordinarily sketchy, simply because she insists on using the, quote, regime change wars phrase, which is indicative of Russian talking points, and is not the case, especially in terms of Syria. As a matter of fact, one of the complaints about Obama was that he was not acting to unseat Assad, that he wasn't doing it. And certainly Trump never came in with that intent, because Assad is aligned with Russia. So why would there be an expectation? There has never been a regime change wars in terms of Syria, especially. And this is one she always alludes to when she comes in. Secondarily, she met with Assad about this. And again, Assad is a partner of Russia. There is no other situation. This kind of like goes with the Trump corruption thing. Trump cares about corruption, but he could care less about, Lavrov has been in the Oval Office 3 times now. He'll meet with Putin with no notes taker, present, and the translator's notes get thrown out afterwards. Meet totally in private, no conditions. He's met with Putin multiple times, but he's not. And he's not worried about corruption. And Putin makes $140,000 a year. I think that's his salary, and he's worth $200 billion. But you're worried about corruption. That's why you're going after Ukraine. That's why you're strong-arming Zelensky after he's been in office for 3 months. The way the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un treats his people could not be a greater example of the violation of human rights and political corruption. Trump has given him multiple meetings, no preconditions. And by the way, that's completely fallen apart. I mean, they're relaunching messages and calling him a dotard again. They're calling him a doddering old man. So the same thing kind of goes with, like, he doesn't care about corruption. It doesn't matter to him. Tulsi has this problem with, quote unquote, our interventionist policies and our regime change wars, but only when it comes to things that go towards Russia's interests. Do you know how many? Oh, okay. There was a car bombing in Somalia today. Right now, the death toll is 80 people, 146 injured, expected to climb. There've been ongoing civil wars. The way the Uyghurs are treated in China, the way the ongoing Buddhist and Muslim fight in Burma, in Myanmar. The tensions between the Indian Hindu nationalists and the Muslims in India versus Kashmir as a disputed region. And I mean, there is nowhere you can look on the globe where you couldn't find a fight to care about that affects the global stage, and definitely America, either on our own through the UN or through NATO, has a direct impact. Russia is literally in a hot war with Ukraine right now. But what is her focus on? What was her big crucial thing? We got to stop these regime change wars in terms of And there's, by the way, there's no point where we're entering into one, and Syria wasn't one we were in. She was actually focused on this one because Syria is in the interests of Russia, period. If you want to show me your foreign policy bona fides, I want to hear about all the rest of those situations. I want to hear your take on those things as a presidential candidate. It's super important. It tells me what your decision-making process is going to be if you're behind that desk. But if the only ones you care about and the only ones you're digging into are the ones where you want things to go the same way Vladimir Putin wants them to go, I question your principles, your logic, your loyalties, and your honesty. And that's the Tulsi Gabbard problem. So, and I don't think she knows anything about any of those, the rest of those conflicts, because I don't think she cares. And I would love to be proven wrong. It is, we got to take a break. I ran over the break, but it's, that's the issue with her. But again, I think for most Dems, it's buying into her trolling is sort of like getting caught in a Twitter flame war, So we'll be back right after this. Mm-hmm. Susan Graham, although swing voters as a group are a slightly smaller number than Democratic and Thug voters counted together. Maybe it's the swing voters who really decide voters. Susan Graham, swing voters are greater than hardline Democratic voters as a group, and as a group. It's yeah, I don't think so either, Hal Vickery. But like I said, I would love it. That would be fantastic. One more like to get to 100. Yeah, give us a thumbs up. Give us a like. Be lovely. Appreciate it. I gotta open this YouTube page. Studio. I need to go to classic. How you doing, Johnny Million?
I'm doing good. How you doing,
I'm
Hallie?
fantastic. Doing my thing. Get busy. It's been a crazy little bit. I'm finally catching up, though. I don't know if you saw my video.
The crazy Christmas?
Yes.
I kind of skimmed through it. I did not see it as it was happening.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was fun. It ended up being a good, solid set. I was very proud of it. But but I also streamed. I got one of those
Oh yeah,
injections.
I wasn't talking about the set.
Oh
I
yeah,
was talking about your
yeah.
You're out and about.
Yeah, I just went and got one of those IVs or whatever, and now I'm like, I need another one of those. I need to go do that again. I got, it's good stuff.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it was cool. Hold on, I think I can go in through this one. Yeah, it was. Can I go? Okay, because I can't see if there's the chat. I'll pop the chat out. I think. I don't want to create YouTube. Where's the buttons I used to use? Because I can't see the super chats in the restream feed. And if somebody does that, and I don't
back in 60.
Thank you. And I don't get to
full lines.
And all I heard was colorectal. But yeah.
I'm sorry, phone lines are full.
Oh, look at that. They know I'm.
Colorectal lines are full.
Everybody's free this weekend.
And I think we have 2 trolls. So.
Oh, okay, that's entirely possible. Representative Gabbard. She's not a senator, although she might be trying to run for Senate in Hawaii. That's entirely possible. This is how you do it. You run for president to raise your Q. She doesn't have a primary challenger currently, so. Anyway, so if where's the link to this? All want to create another one. I want to go.
I'm Dick Kay from Back on the Beat, and here is the Mega Worldwide Radio Program with Hal Sparks.
Was there an S missing that was edited in later? Hal Sparks. I didn't notice.
Poor guy.
No, he's great. I just didn't. That seemed particularly. It's like he re-recorded. Like I didn't like my S on that one, and he went back and did it. The LA Times is reporting Trump's North Korea gamble leaves U.S. back at square one. Where'd it go wrong? Gee, let me think. Maybe all the way back to considering, that you shouldn't sit down with this dude who murdered his own uncle and brother to get his position of power like it's nothing. Maybe not meet him on his turf. I don't know. Maybe do it over video chat. I don't know. Why shake hands with the dude? Because again, this goes towards. Look, North Korea is definitely a nuclear power is an issue, and isolation and sanctions and those kind of things work to some degree. But it's basically a cult state. But Pakistan has nukes as well, in a very concerning circumstance, where the leadership is not necessarily in control of this stuff, and they waffle at the edge of failed state sometimes simply because India wants to overtake them. India views them as a hostile force, so they would be undermining the leadership of Pakistan. So if there's a tipping point where extremists take over that government, they've got nukes right away and no impetus not to use them because they don't plan on sticking around on Earth anytime soon. Like at least Kim Jong
changes the playing field.
At least we know that Kim Jong-un would miss dessert. You know what I mean? Like there's snacks to live for. You see what I'm saying? Like that's why I always
I'm with him.
I'm never like people with tattoos or people who are or heavy like that don't scare me in a situation most of the time because I know they want to live. They understand the pleasures of life. They don't want to. They're not going to. I'm taking you guys with me. It's not usually how it works. But it says when President Trump agreed to. That's weird. I'm reading this correctly. LA Times. Just so you're saying. When President Trump agreed to met North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in 2018, missing an E, right in the first line. LA Times. Okay. In 2018, flying in the face of all precedent and protocol, both Koreas jumped at what appeared to be a biggest opportunity in decades to shake up the situation on the Korean Peninsula. After all, for 25 years, the U.S.-led efforts to curtail North Korea's nuclear ambitions had been seemingly stuck in a cycle of provocation, panic, attempts to diplomacy, with simultaneously hand-wringing it about the wisdom of it and the subsequent unraveling of the fruits of those efforts. Each go-around ended with increased U.S. skepticism about engagement, followed by years of impasse, during which North Korea would surprise the world by making strides in its development of nuclear weapons and powerful missiles to deliver them. Trump's willingness to flout all that came before him as welcomed by the leaders of North and South Korea. After his first summit, he praised the U.S.'s actions, president's actions as a unique approach. A couple months later, South Korean President Moon told Trump he was the only person who could solve this problem. Trump himself also touted the idea that he was singularly positioned to reach a breakthrough in North Korea. People said, Trump is crazy. He told reporters at a Rose Garden press conference.
Only I can do this.
Yeah. And you know what it ended up being? A very good relationship. Nobody else could have done that. Okay. So they've had 3 summits, bunch of letters, lovely letters. They're lovely letters. The U.S. finds itself back in the in familiar waters with North Korea. They're launching stuff again. Nothing has changed. They're calling him an idiot again. 3 handshakes and a meeting again. And the only thing I think we have going for us is that no one takes a meeting with the U.S. president seriously when it's Donald Trump. That's honest to God. That is the only thing that we have on the international stage. The idea that the American president recognizes a dictator and shakes his hand and says this, will not go down in history as that's the point where American presidents started being okay with dictators. It will go down.
It's going to be more like an asterisk.
Totally. Like, oh yeah, that was when they had that Nudnik in charge.
That's when there were steroids in baseball. Unless
we reelect him. In which case, that's when it does become normalized. That's when the Erdogans, the Putins, and the Kim Jong-uns of the world have an all-new status because of their favoritism of a man who was elected twice. The first election of a president, quite frankly, is a shot in the dark no matter who it is. You believe what they're telling you. You hope it's true. You hope they have a history of doing it most of the time. But especially a guy who had no political history at all coming in, that this is going to be seen always as a Hail Mary pass by voters. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
But in terms of, anybody who has a history, even, like Bush Sr. or even Bush Jr. to some degree, because he grew up, he was a governor and he was around politics because of his father. He was also around cocaine, but that's another story. At least there's this idea that they're indicative of the U.S. system. And so by what you can gauge the genuine workings of the U.S. government by what they do. Trump is, interestingly enough, by the extremity of everything that he does, creating himself as a wholly separate entity from how the U.S. government usually works. And even, especially the good parts, the stuff that works the way it's supposed to. And by being that, and his refusal to kind of incorporate himself into kind of the normalcy of it in any stretch other than like Easter egg hunts. But even then, like at Halloween, he's setting candy on a kid's head. Like that kind of, like, it's so, everything's an asterisk with this guy. Yeah. It just looked demeaning, and stupid. But, what do you expect?
Like throwing paper towels at hurricane victims.
Like you've never been around children. But the idea is that he's not indicative of the U.S. system or the U.S. president in any way. So even the fact that he's had this meeting with Kim Jong-un, from a historical standpoint, especially depending on who's president next, that will be a major factor. You know what I mean? That if he gets reelected, this all becomes, then the meetings with Kim Jong-un become the way of the U.S. If they don't, then if he doesn't get reelected, then everything he did during this is a crazy cul-de-sac of madness in the history of the United States. And by the way, we're not, this country wouldn't be special in having that. Every country has gone through this. Germany, where there's a period where the electorate or the people, because of all sorts of trauma or electoral deficiencies, or a power broker moves in and manipulates the system, have had a situation. I mean, England has had the Mad King Georges. The French had to cut their leader's head off at one point for going, they don't have any bread? Why don't they just eat cake then if they're out of bread? If they've run out of bread, just have some cake. It's right there. And with obviously Germany and the recent unpleasantness, no country gets to dodge this. It's just some, like Sweden's is way back in Viking times. They can look back almost, if your worst times were written on parchment, you're definitely one up on the rest of the world. But in terms of, of us, this becomes meaningful if Trump is reelected. If Trump is reelected, then all the kids in cages stuff, the Muslim ban, all that stuff, that's normal U.S. policy.
Outrage.
Yep, all that stuff is normal. That gets normalized. That is, that is the impact of this. That is. And if the uninspired voter doesn't show up because the system, man, or the independents don't show up, by not showing up, that silence is accepting idea really does come into play. It is a meaningful, that is putting your thumb on the scale of history, saying I don't think he deserves to be stopped. That's a cowardly yes vote. That is, by the way, voting present. Anybody who doesn't vote in this election, or I would even argue the protest votes, that's voting present. Then Tulsi Gabbard is your candidate, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because if you're not gonna go against that stuff, then you're codifying it as normal. You're saying it's okay, all of it. You are co-signing every aspect of the Trump presidency if you don't vote against him. And if you are voting for him, you are co-signing everything that he's done. This is not one of these situations where a president has some tangential issues that mucked up, and there were better decisions to be made. So he made the best of two bad decisions, and one of them turned out to be really unpopular, but it would have been worse the other way. But you can't prove a negative, so you're stuck with it historically. That's not what this is. In the case of Trump, it can't be more stark. So, anyways, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll take those other callers. Lisa's saying, Hal, take the trolls' calls. I will. I just wanted to get to that point. So we'll be back right after this.
The trolls actually hung up.
Dag nabbit.
They have like that super short attention span of 6 seconds.
Well, they've also got 5 other shows they're going to call into and say the same talking points.
Yeah.
Look, I know you're probably going to hang up on me because I'm a Republican, but if you just let me finish, what I'm going to really say is that the important thing is Benghazi, Baba Booey, QAnon. Click.
QAnon. Wow, I forgot about QAnon.
Oh, this was the year of QAnon, and boy, was that a big nothing. Shall we review some of the year in the let's do a speed end of year review in the last segment of the show today.
Oh my gosh.
Like the big oh my goshes this year. I mean, there was tons of them. But holy smokes. And don't forget to smash that like. It's the last like of the year. Come on. It's the most wonderful like of the year. Smash it. No, smash it. But it's right there. Yeah. No. As the saying goes, silence is compliance. Yeah.
Yep.
We can fix corporate law if we have a mind to. Corporations were hatched in a
Back in 60 guys.
Thank you. As to keep breathing, they were not born like you and me. Sorry, I felt like the kids were listening. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit, about the Supreme Court ruling that said corporations are people, which is insanity. Well, and I'm like, okay, the minute you can lock everyone up, or everyone on a board can be put to death if their business kills someone in a state that has the death penalty, then corporations are people. But I mean, they're immortals. That's not what people are. I'll give you a present vote on your thumbs up. Da! You bastard!
Yeah, can you just vote present?
There's like a hand just wiggling on the screen.
Yeah. like doing the back and forth meh.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending. Yay!
I'm gonna give Johnny Million a chance to think about it for a minute. But we're gonna do a quick at the end of the show, a 5-minute encapsulated year in review, like the big moments of the year. But first, we got a bunch of callers online, so I want to grab a couple of them before we do that. So who do we have first, Evan?
First, we have Marshall out in Berkeley.
All right, Marshall.
Hello.
Hey, go ahead.
I am not a troll.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see about that, young man. All right, go ahead.
That's right. We'll be the judge.
Well, first of all, I just saw something that I highly recommend, which is The Loudest Voice in the Room.
Yes.
It's like a mini series. I rented it from the library. It's if you're going to go see Bombshell, go see this thing first.
Yes, that's about the. Yeah, it's about the like Fox News and just their strategy. It's
Roger Ailes and where he came from and how what happened to him.
And by the way, wait before you start, Marshall, I want to applaud you with everything that I have for saying you rented that in the library. You took it out of the library. The fact that we went through the whole year and it took till now for somebody to say I got something at the library, it makes me sad. But you did it. You did it under the wire, and I appreciate you.
My wife is a librarian.
Get a library card, people. Okay. Thank you, Marshall. Go ahead.
It's amazing. It's amazing what turns up the library right after you watch it on Netflix.
Right.
Anyway, my question had to do with 401ks in the economy. Like that guy that called that said he was 70 and first voted in 72.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us are hitting retirement age. Our 401ks are doing great.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been better. And I have a feeling that if that holds up, and who knows, it's a long way to go. But if that holds up, there's going to be a thread of crap on the internet and ads and everything else. Vote for the economy, vote for Trump, that sort of thing. What is your counter to that? And how do we deal with that? Because if, let's say, he's impeached and if he is pulled out of office early and the economy tanks right away, if that were to happen, or if he stays in office and the economy stays strong, either way, it's going to be a suggestion that keeping him and his ilk in power. So I'll hang up. I want to hear your answer.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's a very important question. First of all, I'd start with the idea that you notice that the president has no effect on jobs or the economy until it's a Republican. When Obama came into office, the stock market was at 6,400. We were losing 100,000 jobs a month. And he brought the stock market, Obama, during his tenure, with even ice skating uphill, even with them pushing back them at every turn, to 19.6. The stock market went from 6,400 to 19,600. Trump would have to be in office for at this rate that he's been growing for another 12 years to reach those numbers. By the way, the stock market itself is worth $30K. I don't care what anybody says. There is more worth in the stock market than is being held by stockholders right now. Period. We are using part of the problem with the recession idea and the crash and all that kind of stuff, because 2008 was not a natural crash. Even the tech bubble was not a normal crash. That was an investment bubble, just like gold rushes that failed. It's not indicative of the overall economy. They end up crashing the economy because of people's investment strategies to try and grow their the 401ks or retirement packages for retired workers and the like. They put them in the stock market and in other investment situations to help them grow over time so they can make up for the lack of physical workers, the difference in the pay and the payout over time. So they use an investment scheme to cover that distance. And when there's a crash, it cuts into that, right? So we've had two major artificial crashes that have nothing to do with consumers, nothing to do with workers, nothing to do with average businesses getting in over their head. They have been in complete situations where the economy is being hamstrung artificially by minor groups of human beings. In the case of credit default swaps and in the case of tech investment bubbles. And that's just people chasing something that isn't there. The stock market did not lose value. The languaging around it, and I argue this with Ali Velshi all the time. The stock market does not lose value. Stocks lose value. They are in the stock market. If you went into a grocery store and someone told you all the produce is rotten, you wouldn't. You would just go buy the canned goods until they got fresh fruit. You know what I mean? You wouldn't go, oh my God, this whole market is falling apart.
Sure.
the essence of the economy beyond what a president can do has been played up under played down under Democrats and played up under Trump or whatever. I would say your first reaction should always be, what did so you're saying that the Republicans always, or that the government can affect the economy. So that's what you're telling me now. That's what you're telling me now, right? You're telling me that the president does have an effect on jobs in the economy. They can create jobs, they do create jobs, and they do create business wealth. Let me start there with the Republican I would be talking to in this hypothetical. We agree on that. We agree that the president and the government has a huge effect on a positive effect on the economy, can grow business, can grow the economy. You're telling me that that's what you believe now. You believe that because Trump is in office. And if you do, then we need to go look at Obama's numbers. And you need to know that the guy who was Obama's vice president is running for office, was there that whole time when the growth in the economy from where it was to where it went is exponentially higher from where it was to where it's going under Trump. So the best person to pick this economy up where it's on an uptick anyways, and by the way, we'd have been at these numbers under Obama had the 2008 crash not happened. Period, end of story. Within 3-4 years, America was already on that arc up. We are using economic models still, currently, that were created when there was less than 2 billion people on Earth. There will be, within our lifetime, 9 billion people on this planet. There are enough human beings with enough needs, and I don't even mean creature comforts, needs for every business in the United States to operate at full capacity as they exist right now. Never stop production on whatever you make or sell, and still not be able to provide them to everybody on Earth who needs them. That's just the reality of the economy currently. We have the demand side is ever growing. The supply side has been lagging for a long time in business, in capital, and in manufacturing, period. And with China lagging in manufacturing and some of those manufacturing bases shifting to other countries like Indonesia, back to Taiwan, other places like that, and including going back to the United States, there will be a huge counter tilt in productiveness over the next 10 years. The question is, how many people do you need to make your stuff? And that's the Andrew Yang argument about automation. Oh, we got to the end of the show. We didn't get to do we'll do it in the post show. We'll do a little short.
Baby Yoda.
Yeah. You what?
Baby Yoda.
What's Baby Yoda?
Baby Yoda.
Oh, Baby Yoda. I couldn't even understand what you were saying. It's a weird mix coming in my headphones.
I was so excited.
Yes. Okay. That was your one thing. Okay. Johnny Million has said Baby Yoda, which is, by the way, a lie. Yoda is a human being. That's what we look like when we're 900 years old. That's how we age. There is no Baby Yoda. Sorry to burst everyone's bubble.
Well, he's 50 years old, so
in that
relative.
No, because then it would be. It's ridiculous. All right, we'll be back next week or next year, technically. Hopefully Johnny Million can help us be with us also just to kick off the year, just for fun. I think Jackie Schechner will join us as well. We'll just have a nice little powwow beginning of the year because I'm going to be doing this show. The next show will be from Kentucky. So we'll tell from behind the turtle's curtain. Ew, that sounded worse.
Oh my word!
Once it made it out of my mouth, that was bad. We'll be having turtle soup next week in celebration. I'm kidding. But anyways, love to you guys. Love to everybody in the chat room. Thank you, Devin. Go heal, man. Devin worked the show today sick. So thanks for coming in, Devin. Get some rest. Heal up. You're wonderful. Everybody at CPT's got a bug. So vitamin C, water, heal yourself up. We love you. We'll see you next week. Bye. So hey, thanks so much, Devin. I'm going to sign off Chicago.
See you next week.
Yeah,
see you then.
Both. Yeah, cheers. So Johnny, you're
Right, Evan.
yay. So
all right, I've actually got to I've got to pack up some things before the remote recording thing, so I can't really do post remote or post show.
You bastard.
I ain't no bastard.
Terrible.
I'm your delightful friend.
I know. I'm kidding. So that's your Baby Yoda is your main one. Okay, I'll do that. That's great.
The Mandalorian is pretty great.
Yeah.
Or are you just totally down on all things Star Wars?
No, not at all. I like. I mean, I think Rogue One is the best Star Wars movie since the original 3.
You said that.
Yeah, and I believe it.
On that we our opinions do not match.
Well, you're a big Jar Jar fan, so that's and I have a problem. We're just gonna have to agree to disagree.
I like to rate movies by how well the comic relief can swim.
What?
And I think if you do that, my argument is bulletproof.
That's right. I can't argue with it. Oh no, he's caught me. It's incredible. You're very impressive. I love you, my friend. Thank you for being with us all year.
I love you too, and I loved the Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, good. Okay, I have not seen it yet, but I will take your advice on it and go see it. So. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can just bask in the warmth of the sweet nostalgia as J.J. Abrams checks every box.
You mean steals? Yeah. All right. Thief. But okay. Well, that's another thing. That's another argument for another time.
Thief. It's sanctioned thievery.
Now I know it's terrible. That's the worst kind of thievery. Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of like when they sued John Fogerty for sounding too much like Creedence Clearwater.
Right, exactly. Well, not quite, because he was a member of Creedence Clearwater.
No, not when they sued him.
Well, right, no, but initially he was before.
Initially, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. J.J. Abrams was not on the first Star Wars. You're gonna be late because this will start a whole conversation.
I am gonna be late. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Love you. Bye.
Love you too. Bye.
Hello, chat room. I think we're alone now. We lost all of our trolls, but they were hanging around. I'm glad you guys like it. I'm looking forward to seeing it. So, Edward, we're going to get your point. America runs on debt, so they just print money. Getting rid of the deficit would mean the government is in credit. That would strengthen America, not crash it. That's, you have to do that. You have to do it gradually, though. Because there's a lot of money in the bond market and the debt purchase, and they always say that that's the trigger for when the short-term bonds and long-term bonds are an example of whether or not we're heading into into a recession or a depression, those kind of things. This makes us undercut the self-citizen. One of the problems in the U.S. is the idea that economics can just expand forever at the expense of the citizenry. It just undercuts itself. Citizens are the foundation of the economy. I agree. I think the interesting thing, though, is as an international power, as most major, all the Western democracies, definitely China, large parts of Asia, and some of Eastern Europe, as production related economies where you create either physical hardware or software that expand, that is in use all over the globe. That expansion doesn't come with the size of the citizenry. It expands beyond that, and the earning potential of 330 million people in a world with 7.6 billion in it who are focused on either manufacturing or service work, for the rest of those people and the people and the 330 that they belong to, is extraordinary. It just simply is. The limitations economically of the U.S. economy a long time ago had more to do with the limitations on shipping and delivery of things, and we pretty much got that nailed down in a lot of ways. Comparatively, certainly more so than when we had wood ships, but it's a constant. I mean, we have shipping lanes that are like streets. The boats are multiple boats passing each other back and forth all the time, with goods and people going back and forth all the time. So, Planes being the people, the ships. Yeah. Anyways, point being is that if every human being, man, woman, and child in the United States was working at full capacity to deliver a product or service that was useful and necessary to people of the world, they would never stop producing over the course of their life and never stop gaining the benefits of that. We have every bit the capacity from an economic level to have a secure retirement situation, to fix Social Security with the amount of money going in and out of the United States at any given time. It's just a choice to do it. It's just management. And Julie made a point earlier that one of the reasons why Trump's economy is doing so well is he's borrowing money like he's in a deficit. We have double the like we're in a recession. We have double the deficit we had under Obama. And I mean, that in and of itself, is he's priming the pump already. He's adding extra gas all the time. So of course it's going to keep rolling along. The question is that an equivalent? Do you burn that out? Like if you don't have a tax cut, and you're running that deficit, if we get to a recession, do you have to repeal that tax cut to start paying for it and get real cash back in? And do you tamp the economy with by removing that tax cut and then create a downward spiral? That's one of the reasons why the slingshot or the sort of rubber band mechanism of leader choice in voting has such a negative effect. So anyways. 401s have two purposes: get around ERISA pension rules and give the wealthy execs lower tax income. I mean, they have more purpose than that. It's certainly, you can do that with them. Why is it I love the bikini graph from Bush to Obama? Also, I like any bikini. That's unfortunately, neither do the workers who have had the economic warfare waged against them without them knowing. I don't know that any of them didn't know. Here's the post-show question of the day. Someone posed this out. And I've discussed this with a couple of people. And I think if you make housing expansion a priority, you could solve most of the issues. You solve housing and healthcare. The cascading effect across the United States is immeasurable. And I'll tell you why that is. Both housing and healthcare have, cost-wise, have gone up inexorably over the last 60 years, especially. Commensurate to other available goods, which have, they've gone up while everything else has gone down. And I'll give you an example. While new stuff that's been put into the market, like computers, initially a home computer cost you $3,000, and the printer costs another $800 to $1,100. And eventually that started to come down fairly quick, depending on what kind of computer you wanted. Thank you for the great year, Julie. That while wages did not go up in the same measure of time, the cost of useful goods and the availability of foodstuffs and the availability of the variety of over-the-counter medicines, for example, to treat things, has gone down. And so you can buy more with your money now than you could in 1980 by a large measure. I mean, our phone bill, I think, when I was a kid was somewhere in the order of like $20 to $60 for a landline, and long distance phone calls cost you by the minute. And now long distance phone calls are free. Now only the Inc is 700, right? Oh, that's the other way they get you. But even that's improving over time. But the ink still cost you that back then, or you had to buy the paper that had the ink built into it, and it was basically a giant mimeograph. Hal, if you could wish my grandpa luck, I would appreciate it about quadruple. Oh, Good luck. What's his name? Go Bucks. Quadruple bypass heart surgery on Tuesday. Yeah, that's a big deal. But they made huge advances in it, so we'll keep it fingers crossed. But I absolutely wish him luck. So the availability of of computing power available to people, for example, this iPad has more computing power than NASA did when it launched I would even go so far as saying like the first space shuttle, or maybe not that, but like mid '80s rocket testing stuff. Like, but until the mid '80s, you could have run all of NASA on one of these. If they'd had one of these, we'd have had in 1968. We'd have had space shuttles by the mid '70s. Yeah. Let's see. He got admitted to the hospital on Christmas Eve. Oh wow. So did he have chest pains? I hope. Well, I'm glad he's in the hospital. I'm glad at least he survived it, and he's going through surgery if he did that. Let's see. My Polish cousins do not want to come here because they would have to pay for healthcare and college tuition, as well as other perks. They come to visit for a few weeks, but not live here. Yeah. Well, it depends on their economic base, and I mean I don't know enough about how the Polish system works. Point I'm trying to make: this is more about consumer goods versus wages, and how you fix it to make it. Let's see. Current high-end phones and tablets have as much computing power as a room-sized supercomputer from the 80s and 90s. Yeah. Exactly. I still say go no go when I turn on my iPad. What they built was powerful for its intended use. Yes, but the available technology to them was limited to what they could actually build. He had a mild heart attack and did not get in when he. Well, we wish him well. Is that is his name Alan? Is that what people said? I didn't see that. I missed that. Oh yeah, Alan. Okay, well, Alan, we wish you speedy healing and health. Everybody in the chat room's rooting for you. So, in terms of, I'm always aware, having been a nerd as long as I have been. My best friend in school when I was in Kentucky, his dad worked for the Board of Education, and when Apple was just trying to get computers into schools and have people use them, and he got an Apple II, which had a separate monitor and keyboard, which was amazing, and used to load programs on cassette drives. It was literally an audio cassette, and you would put them in there. It was like a mini reel-to-reel computer, but you would use a cassette, and it would take 45 minutes to load a 8-bit program, and if you bumped it, it would fall apart. Yeah, so and Mike Wild says, Hal, actually, the computer I bought in 92 was more powerful than NASA's moon landing computer. It's like they were working on Commodore 64. Yeah, and by comparison today, your phone can do, it would take 10 Commodore 64s, and they still wouldn't have the computing power, especially when it comes to video and the like, that your phone has. But that was expensive. Mike, do you remember how much it cost? Because we got that computer because, they got it. My neighbor got it because his dad worked for the Board of Education, and Apple was trying to show them the benefit of having computers around and having them in the home and all that kind of stuff. And because nobody could have afforded it in our town. It was just ridiculous. But that computer, by today's, it was probably $8,000. And they wanted to put them in school so everybody would start using them. By comparison, it wouldn't even chart. You wouldn't even be able to open any of the software made today with it. Now your $8,000, or even $3,000 for my dad bought a Mac, one of the first Macintoshes, so I could do homework on it. And this was a big investment for him. He bought a computer when they were first available. He bought the Apple. It was a 512K Macintosh. It didn't have a hard drive, but it could store 512K of memory in it. And it cost $3,000, which, as a portion of salary back then was way higher. Now, 1,800 hand built. Wow. So 1,800 as a portion of salaries back then, even with the growth in salaries, even though the salaries haven't grown up commensurate to, the cost of living technically, what's available as far as like flat screen TVs are like, I saw a 70-inch flat screen TV for $800. Like the first flat screen TV I ever saw was probably in '95, and it was like $7,000. The cost of consumer goods has come down so much that it kind of balanced out the wage part of it. It was almost, it would almost, lifestyle wise, the growth in lifestyle would measured up better. Your dollar your dollar goes farther now than it did back then. And even though it hasn't grown with, technically with inflation, as far as how that's measured, what you get for your dollar is so much higher, right? Except in two areas, housing and healthcare. Now, there is a way where it has in healthcare, in that the cost of, what's available over the counter. Most personal remedies, things that used to be prescription only, that will, it's like when you go to the hospital and they used to have to prescribe you Tylenol. Now you could just get it. There's a version of Prilosec that you get over the counter that's usually enough for everybody. There's so much stuff that was prescription and out of the reach of everyone that is now cheap and within reach, that balances that. Let's see. And Can't Stop Lion makes a really good point about the quality of durable goods. That's another question we'll talk to. That's more about waste in my estimation. It's not that they couldn't last. It's just there's money in not making them last. Quality in lots of areas has suffered. Much of the low pricing of Walmart, et cetera, as a result of shabbier product for the massive disposable culture. Yes, this is true. I would say that it also comes from the tech industry's idea of minimum viable product, meaning that you put out not what the best thing you can put out, but the best thing you can put out right now for the lowest price point. And that's just a factor of you trying to be able to have enough money left on hand to keep making improvements, because it's an ever improving field, especially when it comes to computers or flat screen TVs or washing machines, those kind of things. There's always improvements to be made. So you got to have a certain amount of R&D money left on the side. That's the investment world. What I'm talking about, though, is those durable goods, even the replacement of them doesn't cost as much as getting the old one that was supposedly more durable repaired over that same amount of time. Because that's usually the cost balance. You got a vacuum cleaner. If it works, you keep using it. If it breaks, what's the cost of replacing it versus repairing it? If the cost of replacing it and the time of the replacement will last longer than if I get this repaired and will it go on, it's the same decision on scale people make about cars, they make about vacuums, TVs, and all that kind of stuff. So I completely agree about that part of it. But the idea is that what's available to the average citizen was only available to the rich in the 70s and to kings in the 1800s. Cars last longer, God bless fuel injection. Yes, and they've gone down in price too, as far as a portion of, and the quality of used cars is even higher, because people who can afford to will get a new car because they want one, because they want a new clean vehicle. And a used car, when you purchase it, can go so much longer. I mean, my truck, which I love, and they stopped making them, so I'm not going to be able to buy another one, even if I wanted to, is a 2012. I drive it all the time. I love it. I have an FJ Cruiser. It's got 146,000 miles on it, and it doesn't seem to be having any major problems. I'll end up getting it timed and a couple things fixed, I have no doubt, but they last a lot longer. So, point being is that when we talk about wealth inequality and wage stagnation, what we're really talking about largely in terms of real people's existence, in my estimation, and I'm curious to hear from you guys, is healthcare and housing, because everything else, the flat screen that a rich dude has and a billionaire has in their house is minuscule in difference to the flat screen that you can purchase at Best Buy for $800. Literally, there is no difference that's measurable. Your eyes don't see in 4K. It's just true. There's a point where it gets so good and so efficient that, like I have a blender that's like just one of these ninja blenders or whatever that would be the envy of every chef in the 80s and 90s. You know what I mean? Like that stuff and it costs, I think it was I got it as a present because I wanted to use it to make smoothies or whatever. And it was like $150 or something, which is nothing to sneeze at, but it's also not the $3,000 industrial blender that you have to buy for a restaurateur, a chef would have in the 90s. It's just different in that regard. And I don't think that'll break down anytime soon. It's pretty resilient. So when we talk about income inequality and when we talk about, wage stagnation, I think, and I'm curious what you guys think, it really boils down to housing because they're, and this is, being around LA and seeing how this works out and seeing the prices of housing here in Cleveland versus Vegas or LA, and the fact that they're pretty interchangeable, which is sort of madness. The idea of real estate used to be location, location, location. But when you can buy the same physical house from a developer for $400,000, whether it's in Toledo or Vegas or Los Angeles, plot of land notwithstanding in a couple of areas, the manufacturing, the durable goods aspect of the house has gone way down. The where does have a factor. The location part of it does play in, but marginally, it would seem. In places like California where it spikes and people want to live there because it's a prestige kind of thing. But if you look at, Vegas versus Cleveland versus Louisville, Kentucky or whatever, and you're looking at the exact same house price, that's super strange to me. It should be, if the baseline for building that house is that much, you would think they would go up in other places, but they just simply don't, which says to me that they're artificially inflated in places like this. Not that they cost that much more in those places. Where the land is more expensive, you would think the houses would be more expensive, but they're not. So housing, it's a volume problem. We need a building revolution in the United States. We need apartment blocks and flats for low income and marginal income families and young people who are growing who don't have a family yet to live in for a period of time. We need transitional housing, for people who don't want a big space to live in. And then we need, middle class houses for large families, sprawling acreage in the middle of nowhere if you want, but that'd be up to you. But as far as a country goes, I think if we make up for that aspect by effectively overbuilding for a period, the cost of real estate would come down so much that it would be much like the rest of durable goods, which have gone down. The quality doesn't have to go down because we have the baseline standards. And by the way, the baseline standards of durable goods in the United States are especially good compared to the rest of the world. Everything, when you go, like when I was in China, everything just falls apart and flakes off. It's terrible. I don't, it's our standards that raise the quality of the stuff they have there, because if they make it and have to send it to us, it has to be a higher quality. So when they sell it to their own people, it has to, it's a little higher quality just because it's up to our standards, not what they sell within their own country. And then healthcare is the same kind of deal. Now, I don't know upkeep costs too. That's true, but that's a personal part. Hal, you're in Cleveland. I was going to invite you out to my hobbies trivia show tonight, but it's down near Columbus, and that would be a long drive. Yes, it would, Shalbell, but I appreciate the California, New York inflated on steroids for what reason? I've been questioning since I was 19 or 20. Closeness to business. Another area is food quality. All citizens have access to high quality whole foods free of chemicals. Would save so much on our healthcare. That's absolutely true in a lifestyle aspect of things. Can't stop lying. There's also like civics, I think home ec taught in schools would be so much better if people could cook their own foods. If they weren't, this idea that prepackaged food is the norm is concerning. We'll get to public transportation in a point, Edward. That's another great point. But even car ownership is lower. Trump got impeached. Yes, of course he did. Um, let's see. When I first moved here 30 years ago, I got an apartment for $150. Now minimal rent is $700. Right. But 30 years ago, again, what you weren't paying for other stuff, the idea is that people have more leftover money that ends up going to their rent because they're able to run a business out of their home with a computer. They're able to commute to work on a better car. What they're saving in other areas, landlords are eating up. And that's why I think building has to be a priority. The other part is in healthcare is the expansion of what healthcare means. Right now we have hospitals, doctor's office, and quick care facilities. That's pretty much it. My insurance that I have through my union allows me to FaceTime with a doctor, tell them my symptoms, and they can give me a prescription that I can pick up if I don't need to physically go in there. And technically speaking, if I have one of those little EKG things, or I get a little heart rate monitor and have it in the house, I can do a full checkup for them over my iPad, never setting foot in the office, never pay a copay. That's sort of the future of stuff. Amos Sparrow, Jeffrey Epstein still didn't. I don't buy it. That's another question. How I found the price goes up. The problem is the realty companies. They take a house built for $125,000 and sell it for $760K. Well, that's exactly right, because of the volume aspect, because they can. If you have a bunch of buyers and they all want to live in the area, but there aren't that many houses, you can sell it pretty much, you could set your price. But if the house costs $125,000 and there's 24 of them to choose from, the price doesn't stay at $760. It goes down to $200. And I don't mind people making a profit on the work they did because they ventured into something, they built something not knowing if it'd get finished. There's all sorts of reasons, and I'm for that. But thanks to all thank you, Can't Stop Lying. Yes, thank you to the Patreon subscribers. Thank you for our new Patreon subscribers. Join us. Please support. It's a coffee cup a month. I mean, I do the show for free. It's a coffee cup a month. Just be my boss. Go buy me a cup of coffee and go, nice show today, Hal. Thanks very much. I do 4 radio shows a month. You only get charged on Patreon once a month. Even at the $20 level, you're just buying me a cup of coffee every show. Bless your heart. And I thank you guys who do it. It means a lot. When I see it, it makes me very happy. It's very helpful. It's also why the tech in the show has improved immensely, because that's where all the money goes. So thank you. So point I'm trying to make is when we talk about income inequality and we talk about wage stagnation, I feel like it's too big an envelope, and the average voter does not feel the squeeze in the abstract. They feel it in the specific. You know what I mean? Like when people talk about wage stagnation, they don't think about 9 areas where they'd like to buy something and they can't. They just think, well, that's my job. That's what I get paid. It's not gonna, even if it goes up, it's not going to go up that much. And it's certainly not going to let me buy, a house in Acapulco and spread out all these things I want to do. I am very happy, Billy. Thank you so much. So the point I'm trying to make is I feel like anytime somebody brings up the concept of income inequality or wage stagnation, we need to talk about the 2 specific points: housing and healthcare. Bringing down the cost of healthcare, the delivery of it. And I don't mean the insurance cost of it. I mean the actuality of it. What techniques, what technologies, what personnel would make healthcare more available? One is the AMA needs to start approving more doctors through. They bottleneck the number of new doctors that can become certified every year. And it artificially keeps the wages of doctors high because and there was some benefit to this in that they have a big debt to pay off for medical school, and once they get qualified, they want to make sure that this person has a you know an income stream equal to what they're going to have to pay back. So, but there are all sorts of other factors, healthcare wise, like being able to, contact a nurse practitioner or an urgent care place for illnesses and not have to leave the house. Be able to have delivery prescription services for people who are indigent and home, so they save themselves on this, companies that provide pickup services for people in wheelchairs who have to go to and from appointments. If they could do most of that from home, that saves money. You start tamping down all those parts. So that's what I'm saying. So is wage what? We lost that. Wage distortion, another term we could use? I don't know, because I don't think people read that. People hear the word, even living wage is an activist term. I just don't, my concern is that I care about these issues and I see how the language doesn't land or how it gets weaponized against the very thing you're trying to help. And again, most of the time I find too, when they do these when right-wingers do these kind of I'm going to go to this march and ask people a question, and they walk up and they go, what do you hate about Donald Trump? Or what's wrong with, why do you support Bernie Sanders? Or why do you support Elizabeth Warren? Or why do you support Joe Biden or whomever? They do people speak in broad terms. And in terms of income inequality, for example, I think the left hears that as something that's negative that needs to be fixed or remedied. And on the right, it is heard as an example of success. If I work harder than you, have a better, more successful business than you, created a service that everyone in the world uses, why should my income be the same as yours? Why should there be income equality? What's your argument for income equality? Which sounds like communism to them. And they're not far off in that regard. I saw this article the rich have added $1.2 trillion to their net worth. I'm like, the rich, how many people are we talking about? And secondarily, we're all using Amazon. We're all using, the computers Bill Gates made. We're all using this stuff. We're not slaves to them. And it's denigrating to people who didn't have a choice of the work and money that they gave, company store workers, mine workers who had to buy their goods at the company store. It's insulting to their memory to insist otherwise, to say that you somehow have it worse and that exists. So I think we need to specify what we're going after. And for me, I think the cost of healthcare, not just the insurance cost of healthcare, the material costs of healthcare need to come down. Negotiating drug prices is probably the most effective one people talk about. But even that, the development of all of these drugs largely happened through the NIH and the CDC in the United States anyways, with grants at colleges and universities. A lot of the profits from some pharmaceutical companies go to those colleges and universities and pay back government patents on stuff that was made. That's not part of the equation. And one of the reasons why, the Sacklers and those folks, when they get a hold of something that's wholly a subsidiary of what they're doing, because the government and universities won't do opiate research the way a corporation would, like Purdue, they end up walking away with ridiculous amounts of money and creating an artificial need, which is what they did. By the way, know the Sackler name. No, they are evil. So there you go. Anyways, that's my thought on that, is that I think when people bring up income inequality and they bring up those issues, our answer should always be to get specific. There is a housing shortage in the United States. We need to build. We need low-cost housing that can be done through government grants and government additions, but we also need to open up the backlog of building and as far as the building contractors, when they go through this process, my dad's an architect. I've seen it my entire life. There are dudes who just simply put a hold on it almost for gangster reasons to slow down production. There's so many rules about, their stuff that is antiquated or doesn't involve, where a Democrat could go, here's a positive reason to remove some bad regulations. We've got better regulations that cover all this. We don't need the other 10. This one will do it. And we'll eliminate these, and so you don't have to check a bunch of extra boxes. You just do the one thing that solves it. And then you could open up building throughout the country. So, hi. And then the other one is literally not insurance, but the cost of healthcare. We have been having our entire argument, both for Medicare for all, private option, public option, private augmentation, all those things are talking about the insurance and the payment for them without talking about how do we lower the cost of medical care overall. If we had gone with universal health care back in the 40s, we would not be having this conversation today. Now too many people are brainwashed to believe having health care is communism. Damn Reagan. Well, Reagan and his little socialism is on the march. And by the way, he wasn't wrong about some of that stuff. He was just wrong about the healthcare part of it. There were definitely, communists trying to infiltrate the United States and undermine it. There's an argument to be made that the modern Russian gangsters are using the exact same playbook. But again, the problem is this idea that, and this is a semantic argument. We've had this before. Carl and I often have this conversation, or whatever. But we often think of socialism or socialist programs being fire departments, police, roads, telephone, like broadband systems, those kind of things. That would be a socialist vision. Standing armies, blah blah blah. I would argue that those are not socialist at all. Those are simply the effect of a community organizing through taxation and creating services everyone needs. Socialism in the abstract is the control of production by workers. It's not the same thing. This is simply this is group taxation. This is taxation with representation. Instead of the king taking taxes and spending out what he wants, the government takes taxes, and we definitely need fire departments. We're going to need a standing army for some stuff. We're going to need police. We're going to need roads. We're going to need this. That's not socialist by any means. That is simple democratic taxation. But the word gets eaten up in that, and what happens is, instead of cleaning up the word socialism in most people's minds, it dirties up the service part of it. And that includes healthcare, because I don't think healthcare falls under the general welfare. I think it falls under the common defense. It is more akin to a standing army. You need a standing army of doctors and nurses against illness, and so that we can take care of people. Yeah, what Tom Hartman calls the commons, exactly. And he still uses the word socialism interchangeably with it, though. But the commons is a much more useful term, is that we create a space through taxation that everyone gets to benefit from. Yeah. But even then, when he calls it the commons, what they hear is communism. I'm just saying, I'm talking about useful words at this point. Yeah, pal, the cost of healthcare has the possibility of overwhelming our economy. Costs must be lowered while getting more preemptive, proactive with improving our citizenry health, national security. Yeah, that's my point exactly. We're arguing about single payer without saying how much are we paying for and what's the quality of what we're paying for and how can we improve that system itself. It's well, thanks for that, Sam Blam. Wow. Socialism isn't the dirty word it used to be. Not in our circles. It absolutely is everywhere else. And Tom, the danger in America is not socialism, it's fascism. Fascism is also starting to lose its effect as a word as well, because fascism is the state control over all business. And organized fascism, like they had in Italy and Spain, was a point of control where you could just shut that down, keep people from working, and starve them out if they didn't vote the way you wanted to vote, as a control point. We're more in a fear of Trump forming dictatorial powers. He's a dictatorship. There's a dictatorship fear with him. As far as business goes, though, everybody on his side in that dictatorship argument is a free market capitalist private ownership supporter, which was antithetical to the fascism that existed in the governmental systems of Italy and Spain. So it's a lot of it's just a word fake. Again, I think we need new words for a lot of this stuff. But the point I'm trying to make is that when people bring up income inequality and wage stagnation, I think it's important to pivot to specifics so that you can give an example so that the buzzwords don't shut people's ears. And the specifics are housing and healthcare, and not healthcare as an insurance point, not Medicare for all versus private insurance or whatever. The idea that it costs that much for insurance at this point anyways, and that the investment point, the part that costs a lot of money, the venture capital, arguably, side of medicine, which is the development of new drugs and treatments, which costs a lot of money and all that kind of stuff, which is always shorn up by government spending, by the way, should factor into the cost that we pay for it, and its efficacy. That you're paying for efficacy if you're paying a higher premium on those things, and we seek to make what are, like every other product or service in the world. Only rich people used to have butlers and housekeepers, and now most middle class and even upper lower class people could afford, a maid to come to their house once a month. Those kind of things. Like, it was just it was impossible. The impossible is now possible, and then we got to work on where it's not probable. We need to help the people it is not possible for, and make it probable. You can't make it definite, but you can make it probable. You can make you make the opportunity equal in that regard. And healthcare is one of those areas where we need an expansion of services and technologies around it. And if there's going to be a government investment point in that, it can't just be, we'll pay the medical bill for the price of it no matter what it is. That's, I think, where the argument has to go. So East Germany was a democracy, right? No, it wasn't, because they were specifically socialist. But it was a control point too. They were actually fascistic. They were just going to force service from other people. Wendell Potter was a former health executive turned whistleblower, has interesting things about the Medicare for all debate among the candidates and primary people. Should look it up. Indeed. The specific is the need to have a reasonable standard of living for everybody, and policies promoting that, which is basically what you're saying, Al. Exactly, Tom. So the idea is that you make your goal should be make the impossible possible, the possible probable, as best you can. You cannot dictate people's comfort, health, security, and life. It's impossible. That's not possible. But what you can do is take people who never had an opportunity, make sure they have that opportunity. You make people who have the opportunity have options. You make the people who have options have a reason to choose the best option. Cons fight any price negotiation on prescription drugs. Exactly, because that's them getting money from pharmaceutical industries. But again, we fight that from that direct point on, which is the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies. They're the ones who want to keep the prices where they are because they like that money filtering through their system. So we got to fight them to make them lower the cost of prescription drugs. They have no impetus to do that. And legally making the government able to force you to price something that is on the open market is the cascading effect on everyone's life. Just even a wage worker is negative. It undermines, like, I can force you to work for whatever wage I want to say, and you can't. It is the elimination of the any kind of living wage law. If I could force you to sell something at a certain point from a government standpoint, then I can also force you to work for less. So that, I mean, there's a bunch of murkiness in it. My argument is that instead of arguing, continue to argue for lower prescription prices and all that kind of stuff, but where? And one of it is, obviously the most obvious one is negotiating to buy generic forms of drugs from outside the country. The other is governmental production of high quality medicines of a certain type. Insulin, for example. There is a viability and availability that the U.S. government knowing full well that they're like vaccines, a certain amount of insulin on hand to keep the price normal, like we do with food, because it is intrinsic to who everybody is, should have insulin on available. And if you cannot purchase it at a price that works, that if you can't afford it, there is a fallback for you. And the volume of availability of it and the production of it, because it has to be made. You can't force someone to make something at gunpoint, but you can hire someone to make it at a lower cost. And from a governmental point, that's one of the areas where we could do that. The government producing insulin is like the government producing vaccines, as far as I'm concerned, or guaranteeing the availability. Yeah, and so that part of it, I think, is crucial. So, in my Sparks Solutions mind shift that I've been going on over the last little bit, I'm looking into how we go about that. How do we focus on refining the medical system so that people who need normal things, normal doctor's trips, normal, prescriptions, those kind of things, we have an overabundance of them. They don't tax the system by taking up the chairs in the office and extending the work hours of the people there and that kind of stuff, so that the cost of what's being paid for goes lower across the board. One or two of the biologics used for psoriasis now list the monthly price. I remember one of them is just under $3,500. Yeah, and there's dozens of ways to treat psoriasis and variant forms of it, and those isolate forms of doing it that they could charge a lot for is because there's not a lot of other options, and the options that are available, especially if they're alternative medicine or those kind of things, aren't taken seriously. So market saturation, arguably it is, Miles. It is, because right now there's an idea that both in healthcare and in housing, there is a lack of supply. If you need a doctor, there's limited doctors. If you need medicine, there's limited medicine. If you need a house, there's limited housing. And that keeps the price artificially high. We keep farmers afloat by subsidizing food, buying cheese and beans and stuff, storing it till it rots, or handing it out free to people. Anybody who's ever gotten government cheese or powdered milk knows what I'm talking about, which I have as a child. And this is another area where I think it's functional use of that. So, Hal, haven't you heard of prison labor? Yes, but we don't effectively have that in this country. There's prison labor. They make things in exchange for privileges. You don't have to work when you're in prison. You can just sit in your cell. Secondly, the firefighter thing, which often comes up too, Amos, about people fighting fires, as prisoners and being paid very little. The reason they get paid very little is because they get food, housing, and shelter from the state already, and they get a stipend for their work, and they get released earlier. So the work they are doing is to shorten their sentence. They are paying for a crime against human beings, and so to lower their criminal debt to society, they can work for free or very little money. That's part of it. So, yeah, $1 a day, exactly. But that $1 a day goes a long way and it's more than that, by the way, but it's effectively, you get privileges as well that other people don't get, and you get out earlier. You're not working for the money, you're working for your freedom, because you were put behind bars for a reason. There's as much an argument to be made that no one should be able to work off their prison sentence. If you did something, if you're in jail for depraved indifference because you watched someone die and did nothing about it, or you left the scene of an accident where someone perished, and you got sentenced to 3 years, and that person will be dead forever, and you get to leave prison early by getting training as a firefighter and endangering your own life, I buy that. You're willing to make up for who you are. That is a great example, I think, of someone rehabilitating themselves in that circumstance. if you're in for attempted murder because you tried to kill someone and you do the same thing, I don't necessarily buy that, because this could just be a manipulation so you get out of jail so you could do it again. Heard Spanish doctors are happy with 40-hour a week and $230,000 a year. One would think. Prisoners also make eyeglasses that are paid by the government. Exactly. Prisoners haven't made a license plate in Illinois for decades, as long as I know. I'm just using that as an example because that's what most people think of when they think of prison labor. But you don't have a job in jail. You don't get paid a wage in jail. You get to shorten the time you are in jail. That's what good behavior is. That's a big part of that, you know. You can not be a problem, or you can be a proactive help. And then when you get paroled in 7 years, you get a chance to be back out on the streets, you've proved that, no, I can work with other people. I worked in a shop. I didn't stab anybody, you know. And if you take a job like you're being a firefighter or something where you're actively choosing, maybe even after you leave, to have that job and continue on, and you've also shown that even though your crime might have been egregious, you are willing to endanger your life for the betterment of other people, that is a good sign that you're a rehabilitated person. Or you can get a Republican governor to pardon you. Or not. Yeah. So, Brooks ran the library. So that's another conversation. I don't buy the whole like wage slavery prison thing argument at all. Just period. It's a weak argument to start with. But again, if you have a job in prison, you are not working for money, and you don't have to pay. You don't even have to pay health care. If you're in jail and you get sick, the government pays for it. You have government health care in jail. You have, for nearly everything, transplants, you know, for the extent of the time that you are incarcerated. The government is responsible for your physical health. You also are fed and housed. There's water pumped to you. You have clean supplies. No matter how you act, that is provided to you by the state. And then, if you so choose to work off part of your sentence, you don't make cash, you get time back, which I think everyone would argue is more valuable than money. Because you can get more money, you can't get more time. Understood, Robin. Pardons were working really well in Kentucky recently. Oh, God. Right. Working in so-called good behavior shouldn't shorten their sentence depending on what they did to get in prison. Well, it doesn't. I mean, some people can't do that. I'm just, you know, my cousin has been working on this Lester Eubanks story, and I posted the story about this guy. He sexually assaulted and murdered he was out on bond for sexually assaulting a woman, murdered a 15-year-old girl, shot her twice, came back, she was still alive, and hit her with a concrete block and killed her. She'd been laying there for an hour, bleeding, before he did this. Horrible man. Got the death penalty. And then while he was in prison, the death penalty got eliminated, a federal death penalty. So his sentence was commuted. He started doing painting and art shows and selling his art. He got good behavior stuff. He ended up getting allowed to go Christmas shopping on for people in his family, unsupervised, for 2 hours in a mall, disappeared, and he's never been found again. This is a serial sexual offender and a murderer who has been on the loose since 1968. And if you ask me, no way that he is not reoffended. But that guy got the ability to, quote unquote, work in prison to shorten his time and make himself more eligible for parole, get privileges. The privilege was unsupervised Christmas present shopping. So, for example, using an extreme example, a crime, a person is more likely to be sentenced to death for a murder of a Caucasian than they are likely to get the death sentence for the murder of a minority. Sort of. The statistic on that is more apt to go with a, statistically speaking, you're more apt to have the murder of a Caucasian by volume and end up in a death penalty situation by an unknown minority, meaning they don't know that person, which is usually one of the categories for death penalty is, killing somebody you know is often a lesser penalty than killing somebody you don't know and killing strangers and the like. So statistically speaking, and this is meaningless to single human interaction, but one of the reasons why that actual statistic pans out is because interminority violence is often tied to multiple acts, whereas single murder of a Caucasian is usually tied to singular acts, statistically speaking, meaning that like Hispanic murders in the United States are are statistically rare among people. I mean, they're not. It's not a really high worrisome number, but when they do happen, they usually are entailed in a drug deal of class 1 drugs, not just weed, like meth and other drugs, and multiple fatalities. If you're going to end up with a death penalty thing, that's how that usually works out. Statistic. Again, I always say, if somebody gives you a statistic and says percentage-wise this, look at the numbers. If they give you the numbers, look at the statistic, because then you can make your decision. But even the death penalty people and the side of that, they should be excluded from this entire conversation. We're talking about largely nonviolent offenders that should be allowed to work release themselves. If you used a gun in a crime, forget it. But anybody short of that, if you're a multiple burglary subject or anything like that, and you want to work your way out and clean yourself up, go for it. That's because killing someone you know is likely a result of a crime of passion, extreme anger. Exactly. And the idea is that you won't kill anybody after the fact. That's we always say, like, and that's why I believe, some people will argue that there's no such thing as a hate crime, or that hate language doesn't exist, or hate speech doesn't exist. Well, I don't think you can punish quote unquote hate speech. I think it does exist in terms of determining the reason why someone killed someone. If random person kills random person for an interaction they had, the question about the severity of this crime goes to, will they do it again? Are they a danger to society? Was this a circumstance that was unique to this circumstance? It was nearly self-defense, 2 even people. This was the person who lived, but both of them were in the wrong. And will this occur again? Do we have to worry about this person forever? Or is this something someone can pay a price for and then recognize it was bad and straighten up? Whether they'll be a good member of society is another thing, but we don't have to house them and feed them forever. They can go back into society. That's the kind of baseline. The reason why I think hate speech should be a factor in stuff is because a person who picks someone that they harm because of that person's specific status in a group is more dangerous than the average person who might get into an altercation with someone, because the person who has something personal with that one person, in theory, they won't have that same personal problem with another person, or will learn from that. But if they have a problem with the skin color or the religion or the LGBT status of someone, there are millions of other people who are in danger if this person who has a random trigger point is out in the public than a person who has a specific trigger point that's indicative of an interpersonal relationship, right? And so hate speech and those attitudes should be a factor in motive, I believe, and hate crimes should be a specific motive, because the public at large is more endangered by that human being, because that hate, that act will come out of nowhere. It's one thing to go, well, yeah, I got into a fight with this dude and and stuff escalated. But if you have someone who just can randomly, just out of the corner of their eye, they don't like the color of someone, or they don't like that someone's gay or what have you, that person is now in danger from that person. And so it does. I really do think it factors, and should be a measurable aspect. If somebody blogs about Hispanics nonstop and then ends up killing someone who's Hispanic, I think you can read into that stuff that person had it out for that individual because of their group status, and that anyone in that group is more in danger with this person out on the street. And it's sort of the effect of when someone kills a police officer, why that's more egregious than if they just kill a citizen. Because the idea is that they'll kill a citizen, they'll kill, or they kill a police officer, they'll kill anybody. If they're not scared of killing a police officer, they're not scared of shooting anybody. So children are more in danger. Old people are more in danger. Random citizens walking around are more in danger from this person than if they just had an altercation with an average citizen. Does that make sense? And so the same thing I think applies in a hate crime status. It is effectively taking the cop status and attaching that to any recognized group that can be defined, including white people. If you kill somebody because they're white, every white person is in danger from you. Jimmy Carter is in danger from you walking around on the street if you just think this person deserves to die because of their skin color. And I think that should attribute to anyone. More emphasis on intention, motivation over essence of the crime. Well, I think that goes to the essence. I think intention and motivation is the essence of the crime. You're trying to eliminate that from the world, or start a race war, or violently attack someone for that status. You're attacking their essence, not the individual. I think it's an important factor as far as I'm concerned. Just thinking out loud, postulating on a hypothesis. Anyways, I got to sign off, guys. The family is back from the feast, and I think they're going to pick me up and take me back over there. So I love you guys, and you're wonderful. And again, this is I'm curious. Ruminate on it, guys. If you have a thought about this, I'd love to read it in the comment section below. But going with the idea that when someone talks about income inequality, how we bring up those who've been left out, guaranteeing them an entry point, making sure that entry point is sound, and they don't get to reach a certain point and then get batted down by a control factor that they have no play in, is super important. And then, of course, in healthcare, the mechanics of bringing down healthcare is crucial to this argument. And I feel like we focus way too much on insurance, how we're going to pay for it, instead of what we're actually paying for. So, and the same thing goes with housing or whatever. But I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts about it. Again, I've been liking in the post show lately, like opening this up as a discussion for you guys to kind of insert your thoughts into this so we can kind of ruminate on this. And if it takes you a while to, ruminate on, get back to me, email me at my website, or, send me a letter, what you think, or, if you've heard about, therapies, possibilities, those kind of things. I would love to hear that kind of stuff and sort of incorporate it into the show going forward this year. And again, vote.org, again, we need to put the fear of God in Paul Weyrich. We need to vote. Everyone needs to vote, and a meaningful vote that has an impact on the election. And thank you, Lord Dracula. I will tell Camden hi as well. Yeah, I appreciate you guys so much. And again, thanks to the Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. Patreon.com/HalSparks. I know I keep saying it, but I have to. Rob and I are working on a cool gift for you guys who've been with us for a little bit. And I finally could send out the scripts. So the scripts are coming out as soon as I get back home. There's a little bit of wrangling about that. It's hard to, never mind. But anyways, it's not important unless you're at that status. And most people aren't, but there's a few that are waiting for them. And they're coming. I'm just letting you know. And you guys are wonderful. I've ordered more patches, so we'll have more of them too for anybody who joins. And then there's going to be a special element to it as well. It's cool. You'll like it. Anyways, and either way, if you join the Patreon at any level, only do so to support the show, because the money doesn't go to the stuff I give you, on there, like the comedy shows and the and access to the live shows, all that stuff. That's all just grease on top of it. The Wonky Donk podcast, all that's just for your enjoyment, right? The real reason, if you want to support the radio show and help us out, that's what does it. So I appreciate it, because that's where it all goes. You guys are wonderful. Take care of yourselves. Take care of somebody else. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. Bye, Billy. Bye, Ax. Bye, Go Bucks. Bye, Brad. Thank you, Can't Stop Lying, so much. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Carl. You guys are wonderful. Thank you, Robin. I appreciate it. I knew you were joking. Amos, you're wonderful. Miles, thank you. There you go. Love you back, Julie. Jim, thank you so much, brother, and thank you for being a patron. I appreciate that too. Pamela, you too. I'm rolling back because I want to see who's in here still. Connie Kelly, thank you. Thanks, Bruce. Bruce, good to see you. Hal Vickery, again, thank you so much for your ongoing support. It's fantastic. Benny Loco, always lovely, and thank you for your boosting as well. Eric, I'm serious about coffee, by the way, brother. And Miles, thank you. Take care of yourself as well. Lisa Ann, thanks so much. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks, everybody on Twitch as well. Subscribe over there. There will be more gaming in the new year. There might even be some more gaming tonight. What? In Cleveland? How's it possible? Some of things are quite portable. I'm just saying. Oh, yeah. So take care of yourself, guys. And I'll see you next time. Bye.